Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a manhwa called I Will Take Responsibility for the Welfare of the Male Lead. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, as it really helps our channel. Thanks. We start our story on a rainy afternoon. A young lady is being welcomed into an estate belonging to the Duke Blackwell by a friendly butler. The lady in question is Lady Sherwood. At least, that's her character anyway. You see, Lauria's body is currently being inhabited by a soul from the real world, who one day woke up inside a tragedy novel. The story gets pretty dark and twisted, especially around the character of the Duke. But right now, Lauria is just there for an interview with him. The Duke plays a complex protagonist in the novel. At times, he's a heartthrob. At times, he's a monster. Fittingly, his name is Nocturn Blackwell. Sounds perfectly dramatic, don't you think? As it turns out, Laria came up with it. Actually, she invented all of this, since she's the author of this story. You might think it'd be fun to be trapped inside your own book, but Laria isn't the female protagonist destined to enter a twisted romance with the Duke. Actually, Lady Sherwood is the villainess, desperate for Nocturn's love and blinded by her own jealousy. After many attempts to get between the protagonists, Nocturn ends up killing her. So you can see why she's not exactly happy with her fate. When she first woke up in this world, Laria freaked out and stayed inside for days. Then she decided to change Laria's story, hoping that she might be able to avoid the same fate. Unfortunately, there are a few obstacles, the biggest one being her evil family. Another is that the story doesn't seem to be following her writing. For example, she learns the hard way that Laria has a buckwheat allergy, which isn't a detail she ever included in the novel. I guess these characters have a mind of their own now that they've been brought to life. Hoping to compare the timeline of the novel with her new reality, she digs out Laria's diary. But before she can read it, there's a knock on the door. She has an unexpected visitor. Someone recommended by the Duke Blackwell, apparently. Now this is not good news. Up until now, the author was sure Laria and Nocturne had not yet met, and she was hoping to stay alive by avoiding him completely. Well, it looks like that plan is down the drain already. A quick flip through the diary reveals that Laria saw an ad for a maid position at the Blackwell household and applied, hoping to escape her own miserable relatives. She secretly sent off an application, and now someone has come to take her for an interview. Her stepmother flies off the handle as soon as she finds out. Instead of kissing their boots, Laria boldly reminds them of how poorly she is treated, how no one cares if she gets sick or bothers to feed her sometimes. So she tells them to act like normal and pretend she doesn't exist. Damn, that's a mic drop moment right there. I only hope it doesn't come back to bite her later on. Next, we fast forward to the interview, Laria and Nocturne's first meeting. It's kind of cool for the author to meet her protagonist in person. He's just as handsome as she dreamt. Since she wrote him to be like her ideal type, it's no surprise she can't help a little staring. Of course, his personality is pretty scathing. Since Laria wrote the resume before the author took over the body, she hasn't made a very good impression. The job is mostly looking after the Duke Blackwell's children, something that the real author would be great at since she was a kindergarten teacher in her old life. But she can't say that, so Laria kind of just acts like a 19-year-old should and pretty much flunks the interview. The Duke isn't very pleased and sends her packing soon after that. While walking through the hallway, she hears a child crying and a voice telling them that being hit is the best form of discipline. Whoa, is that the kind of house the Duke runs? That is so messed up. Lauria can't stand by and bursts through the doors to find two young children comforting each other on the floor. Standing above them is a pale woman with a literal whip in her hand. That's right, an actual whip, because apparently we're in the Middle Ages here. On instinct, Lauria stands between the governess and the children, blocking the next hit. It looks like he's being punished for spilling some tea, even though the scalding hot burn was surely punishment enough. Lauria picks up the poor kid and demands that he get some treatment. Just then, the Duke walks in, surprised to find his governess and the Lady Sherwood going head-to-head over his son. He agrees to take his son to a doctor right away, but scolds her for interfering in their household affairs as a guest. Seriously, dude? You expect someone to hear a child being whipped and not interfere? After further discussion, it becomes clear that the Duke didn't ask his children to be punished in this way and had no idea what the governess was doing. But he doesn't seem very mad, considering these are his kids. The son's name is Mikhail, and the daughter is Jeanette. The twins' relationship to Nocturne is as complicated as he is. They're not actually his kids. But because he killed their father and their mother passed away after their birth, he took them in. As you've probably guessed, he isn't the most affectionate father, but he's made sure everything has been provided for them, from toys to education. Unfortunately, he also had a pretty cold upbringing, so although he doesn't want them to be hurt, he trusts that his expert governess would have had a good reason for harsh discipline. That is, until the doctor exposes the wounds all over Mikhail's hands, revealing frequent and cruel use of the whip. Oh my god, how could you do that to a child? Still, Nocturn doesn't blow a fuse. I would have fired that woman right there on the spot, but he just tells her to be gentler until Mikhail's hands heals and sends Lauria home. I'm not sure I like this guy. Is he really meant to be the male protagonist? Although it wasn't her place, Lauria couldn't help but jump in that day. When she was younger, she was often in Mikhail's position. Her real self, Namju-yeon, was abused as a kid, so she feels incredibly guilty and sympathetic for his position. Deciding that she should take responsibility as the author of this novel, she runs back to the Duke and asks him to please hire her as the maid. Despite flunking the interview, she is determined to put things right and above all, to protect those kids. At first, the Duke refuses. She tries to use her knowledge as the author to sway his heart and makes a comment about how passive he was about Mikhail considering he was also abused as a child. Uh-oh, wrong move, Laria. I have no idea why she thought a complete stranger commenting on his traumatic past would make the Duke change his mind, because it has the complete opposite effect. He thinks that she's trying to use whatever dirt she has on him to make a threat and literally threatens to kill her. I think we're all quickly learning that this guy has literally no chill. But Lauria manages to twist it around to convince him that she just guessed based on his reaction to the wounds, and encourages him not to let his adopted children turn out the same way. By some small miracle, he agrees to give her 2 weeks as a trial. She's given a room and a maid of her own named Mary. Once she's all moved in, Lauria makes it her mission to make friends with the kids. She bends their usual rules to acquire a small feast of cakes and cookies, bribing the hesitant children with the oldest trick in the book: sugar. Jeanette seems especially wary, but slowly they start to let their guard down. Over the next 3 days, Lauria works hard to gain their trust, waking them up in time for breakfast, sitting in on their classes to keep an eye on Molly, the evil governess. When the little prince refuses to go to bed, she offers to read him a fairy tale to help him sleep. That's when Mikhail reveals that Molly comes in every night to feed him bad-tasting tea. Well, that sounds incredibly sus. Jeanette backs him up, claiming that Mikhail can't sleep because of it. She tried to feed it to both of them, but the tea contains mint, which she hates, so eventually Molly stopped giving it to her. She told them it was a tea to help growth, but who the heck would believe that? Especially when she told the kids to keep it a secret between the three of them? That governess is definitely up to something shady. Lauria goes straight to the doctor, passing on the information that the kids gave her. From the flavors, he thinks it might be something called workers' tea. It's kind of like coffee and puts a strain on the heart if someone drinks too much, and the effect would only be stronger and more dangerous for kids. Lauria wants to go straight to the Duke, but she needs evidence. While searching the kitchen, she gets caught by the very man himself. He demands an explanation, but before she can come up with an excuse, they hear someone at the door. The new maid gets a sudden flash of genius and grabs the Duke, stashing the both of them away in a corner just as Molly enters. Ignoring the fact that they're squished up very tight against each other, they have a front row seat to the most classic villain monologue in manhwa history. While brewing the tea, Molly explains every detail of her evil plan to distance the Duke from his children, and even mentions sacrificing the children. I don't know how someone could be so stupid as to say all that out loud, but it's perfect timing. The Duke and Lauria burst out into the kitchen, where the new maid explains everything she heard from the kids. Molly is shocked to have been caught and starts trembling with rage, talking about how Lauria doesn't know what kind of things have happened in this house. Then she mentions something about a hysterical syndrome, which makes the Duke freeze on the spot. In the novel, the author added in a disease passed down through the generations of the Blackwell family that makes a person lose all reason and give in to violence. Perfect for a brooding, tragic character like Nocturn. Not so perfect when you actually have to deal with it in real life, though, I guess. As if that wasn't bad enough, there's a very emo catch to this syndrome. After having an episode, the affected person has to drink enough blood to be satisfied in order to return to their senses. It's pretty damn dark. And as it turns out, Molly's sister used to work as a maid in the Duke's house. She witnessed one of his hysterical episodes and was so traumatized that it made her want to take revenge on the Duke for all the people he has terrified. I mean, this syndrome does sound pretty horrific, but why does she have to take it out on the kids? As it happens, Laria heard about the incident with Molly's sister from Mary, who is a close friend of hers. She just recently received a letter from the girl talking about how much her life has improved now that she has found peace. Apparently, this isn't very comforting to Molly, who tries to slap her. Somehow, Laria remains impressively calm and simply tells the governess not to get buried under her anger. I love how this girl is giving everyone a little therapy session, all because of the trauma that she literally wrote for them. Unlike the others, Molly is past the point of return. She grabs a knife, trying to wield it at Laria in her fury. The Duke steps in to protect her, finally showing a bit of chivalry for once, and soon the guards arrive to drag the governess away, screaming and kicking. She's banished from the Blackwell household, leaving Laria to successfully complete her trial period. At the end, she is offered a formal contract. Before signing it, Nocturn opens up about the dangers of choosing to work under him, knowing he could become hysterical and put her in danger. Laria also opens up about the real reason she applied for the job. Now, with everything on the table, she can sign without any guilt. She's officially free from her evil family and safe by the side of the male protagonist until the love interest comes along, which won't be for a good few months yet. A few days into her official position, Laria notices a lot more workers around the estate. Mary informs her that the house is preparing to host a dinner party. Doesn't sound that exciting to me, but it makes Laria's blood run cold. The event is held every spring as a chance for the two most important families of the empire to interact. The Imperial family, who govern internal affairs and the economy, and the Blackwell family, who keep to themselves and deal with security and diplomacy. It will be a very high-profile event. But the main reason Laria is worried is because her family, the Sherwoods, will also be attending. Since this is the dinner party where the Duke's children will be formally introduced to high society, it will be difficult for Laria not to attract attention. So, she decides to go in a disguise and make it a game for the children. If they can greet all the guests properly and find Laria hiding among them, she will give them a present. It's going well until she's found by Norman, one of the Sherwood brothers, who recognizes her voice. He chases her through the hallways, trying to get a good look at her face. It looks like he's going to catch up until suddenly an arm pops out and swings Laria inside a room. When Norman peeks in, he finds his sister with the Duke in a, shall we say, very compromising position. As soon as Laria comes to her senses, she pushes him away. But the Duke isn't so easily deterred. Clearly, he pulled her in here for a good reason, and that reason was to ask her to marry him. Okay, what? This guy is insane. Just a minute ago, he was threatening to kill her. How did we go to a proposal this quick? As it turns out, the guests have spent the whole party discussing the rumored downfall of the Blackwell family and how the current Duke has failed to get married. These rumors have been spread very much on purpose by the Imperial family, but it's still important to prove them wrong if he wants to stay powerful and respected. With Norman banging down the door, Laria has a split decision to make. Go back to her life with the Sherwoods, being bullied and ignored, or take a risk with the dark and violent Duke, turning the whole plot of the novel upside down. For Laria, it's an easy choice. She agrees and exits the room confidently. Norman tries to take her back home again, but this time the Duke intervenes, explicitly calling her his fiancée and giving her brother a clear warning to treat her well, or stay the heck out of their way. Well, that escalated quickly. After that, Norman acts like a gentleman for once, politely asking the Duke to step aside so he can have a word with his sister. He warns her not to announce the engagement at this party. Many of the Blackwell nobles want the Duke to marry into the Imperial family and have conspired to make something happen tonight. When Laria works with the courage to tell the Duke, he is completely unbothered. In fact, he already knows that there's an assassin in the mansion somewhere and has been deliberately ignoring them to gain the element of surprise. Duke? Could you put aside your silly fantasies about being a master of combat and remember that you have kids? If there is an assassin, they're in grave danger. That's Laria's main concern, so she demands they get back to the party immediately. Of course, she can't return in that maid outfit. This time, she will be presented to the nobility as Lady Laria Sherwood, future wife of the Grand Duke Blackwell. Doesn't she look pretty? After walking arm in arm, he unexpectedly announces their engagement at the dinner table, taking all the nobles and Laria by surprise. Everyone who was gossiping about his downfall earlier is now praising the Duke. Everyone except one person who is laughing unnaturally hard. Laria doesn't have time to think. Between the suspicious character and the satisfaction on her face, she guesses the outcome a split second before it happens. Just as the chandelier above them detaches, she shoves Nocturn out of the way beyond the reach of the falling metal. As it comes crashing down, both Laria and the Duke land safely a few meters away. Nocturne is gathering her in his arms when a would-be assassin suddenly raises his knife to strike from behind. The Duke doesn't even flinch. Instead, he calmly calls for Pernil, the deputy commander of the Blackwell Knights, who takes care of the assassin in a heartbeat. Damn! These guys are kinda badass! What's even cooler is that in all the commotion, they managed to arrest some of the corrupt nobles among the Blackwell clan. They're also the people who conspired to kill him this evening. He makes an example of them to the other guests, using the traitors and Laria's heroism to prove that he is not crazy and that his family name still stands strong. Which is great and all, but I wish Laria would get some credit. When she wakes up, her family are waiting by her bed to deliver another nice cold slab of cruelty. Her father is not happy with the engagement and calls her a disgrace to the family name, which is probably the first time anyone has said that after their daughter managed to bag a proposal from a duke. The man of the hour shows up to chase them all away, just in time for his children to arrive and check in on her. The Duke apologizes for announcing the engagement so suddenly, but Laria can't be too mad. After all, he quickly wrapped his arms around her during the fall, pulling her over with him. If he hadn't done that, she would have been killed by the chandelier, and things would be very different. The Duke gives her some vacation time to recover and leaves her alone with the kids, who are delighted that she's okay and even happier to have her sticking around for their sake. After some well-deserved bed rest, Laria checks in with the Duke to discuss the whole announcing the engagement and putting her life at risk thing. But before they even approach the subject of marriage, Laria asks her fiancé for one unbreakable condition in their little arrangement. Should they both fall in love with different people, she wants them to break up cleanly and without a fuss. It sounds kind of pessimistic only 2 days after a proposal, but Laria is thinking of the plot as usual. The moment he sees the female lead, Nocturne will fall head over heels in love with her. When that happens, she wants to be able to cut ties and get out as quickly as possible. Given what we know about his possessive, aggressive nature, it seems only fair. The Duke agrees and moves on to asking about the kids. Laria is still very willing to take care of them, but asks him to be a little kinder to them. I mean, he hasn't showed much affection so far, and they were definitely scared of him when she first arrived. The idea of having a real conversation with kids is apparently too much for the Duke, so she advises him to try a simple smile. But he looks more like a monster than a father figure. Seriously, that is the creepiest smile ever! But he promises to practice, which is kind of a big deal from the Duke of Hysteria and Violence. Speaking of, we get to see Nocturne's darker side again once his men apprehend the scarred man from the dinner party and bring him to the palace. It turns out he's also responsible for stealing the Duke's military supplies and attempting to sell them to his enemies, as well as a whole host of other crimes. But Blackwell isn't bothered by any of that. The only thing that angers him is that he tried to harm Laria. He sentences him to death as the criminal declares his loyalty to the Emperor Gunther, still screaming until the moment the sword comes down. That man was actually a viscount, and a powerful one at that. To have killed such a high-ranking official so close to the imperial family is surely going to cause problems for the Duke in the future. Looks like we're edging closer and closer to a straight-up conflict between these two factions. Oblivious to all this political tension, Lauria introduces Mikhail and Jeanette to a system called the Good Child Ticket. If they do good things, they get a stamp, and when they fill the ticket, Lauria promises to grant one wish of their choosing. It's pretty basic preschool stuff, but apparently no one in this empire has ever thought of it, so the staff are pretty impressed. Mikhail is naturally a pretty good kid, so he earns his stamp pretty easily, just for watering a flower. Of course, then Jeanette is outraged that she doesn't get one too, so she sneakily gets the staff to water almost every plant on the estate and claims that she did it herself for a stamp. Well, they do say work smarter, not harder. From then on, Jeanette copies every one of Mikhail's good deeds, trying to one-up him and earn stamps through the staff's hard work. It turns into a kind of relay race, since these two are hella competitive for kids their age. But as long as they're doing good, there's no harm done, right? Soon after the stamp race has begun, the Duke returns from a business trip. All the servants are summoned to welcome him home, and the kids line up to greet their father. Poor little Mikhail is shaking, but at least he doesn't cry this time. But instead of checking on his literal children, he first asks Laria how she's been. The fiancé always comes first in this household. Laria is a little taken aback, but she assures him that she's doing just fine. Stoic as usual, the Duke just walks away after that, leaving her with the kids. Less than half an hour later, he calls her in for a chat over tea. Something he has only ever done if there's been a problem with the kids. Or, that one time she was nearly murdered. Considering how tense he looks, it seems like there's another life-threatening situation to address. But the first thing he says is that he's been practicing his smiling. Oh my god, he's too cute. He says he wants to show her, so Laria mentally prepares herself for another horrifying grimace. Except somehow, he has gone from grinning beast to handsome lead of a romance novel. Laria is so impressed that she actually gets a little flustered. She turns away, congratulating him. But that isn't enough to satisfy the Duke, who suddenly gets up and walks over to her, gently turning her head. Since he did all this practice just for her sake, he tells her to look closely. Oh my, what the heck did he learn while he was away? What kind of business trip was this? Recovering herself, Lauria asks him to show this smile to the kids. So the next day after playtime, she gathers Mikhail and Jeanette and says the Duke really wants to see them. At first, they flat out refuse, but only end up agreeing because she promises to come too. Walking into the Duke's quarters, they looked paralyzed with fear, which is why it comes as such a surprise when the doors open to reveal towers of cakes and sweets. They are even more shocked when the Duke asks how they've been. Sweet Mikhail doesn't know what to say, but thankfully Jeanette answers politely for them both. I guess that's all the emotional conversations he can manage for one day, because then the Duke tells them to dig in and enjoy the food. One step at a time, guys. As they were turning to leave, the Duke flashed them one of those smiles he's been working so hard on. When Laria asks them later what they thought of the meeting, they're not very positive. It's strange for someone so dark and serious to suddenly be so kind. Maybe they're a bit suspicious? But Laria is taking the reaction as a good sign. At least they didn't outright say they hated it. The situation reminds her of her past life where she was bullied for not having parents of her own. Brushing those memories aside, she puts her sole focus into the kids in her care, so they never have to grow up feeling the way she felt. The following day, she returns to the Duke with renewed determination. Now that they've conquered smiling, it's time to learn another basic: how to hold a child. Using a teddy bear for practice, she quickly discovers that Nocturn has no idea what he's doing. She shows him how to support a child properly and even demonstrates by moving his hands into the right position, hugging him from behind. She doesn't even realize what she's doing until suddenly she leaps back, apologizing profusely. In the book, Nocturn was famous for hating any unnecessary touching, but judging by that face, I don't think he was totally against it. After a little more practice, the Duke gets the posture down right, yet he refuses Laria's suggestion to try hugging the kids. He's worried they'll just run away and won't let them touch him. She reassures him that in time, they will soften. He just has to keep working at it. Once parent training is over, he escorts her through the palace back to her room, leaving at her door and bidding her goodnight. Laria's parting words are for him to sleep well, a mistake that she only remembers once he's gone. It's part of Nocturn's backstory that he hardly ever sleeps. When he does, he has horrific nightmares. That's why he becomes so obsessive with the female protagonist. She slowly heals his trauma and he comes to know comfort again. Yikes, this man really knows no peace. And it's all because she wrote him that way. Suddenly guilty, she calls out to him from across the hallway. In the most awkward way possible, she asks if it would be okay if she puts him to sleep. Yep, exactly like that. Ignoring the fact that that's incredibly creepy, he asks how she intends to cure his insomnia, when so far every doctor has failed. Laria takes it as a chance to prove herself and follows him into the bedroom. The Duke changes into his sleeping clothes, which don't exactly cover much, and poor Laria has a hard time getting a hold of herself. Hang on, did he do that on purpose? I wouldn't have put it past Nocturn to flash a little chest on his way over to the bed. Finally, it's time to reveal Laria's grand plan to cure the Duke's trauma-based insomnia. And her plan is to sing him to sleep. Oh, I can't watch. It's too cringe. Obviously, the Duke is doubtful, but she asks for just 5 minutes. After that, he can kick her out. So she sits down on the bed beside him and starts to sing. Not 30 seconds in, the Duke grabs her arm and bolts up in bed enraged. You see, the reason he has so much stress around sleep is because of the father of Jeanette and Mikhail. This song reminds him of those times back when he was younger, so singing it is basically like triggering him. I'm not sure why she thought that might be effective, but Laria just plays it off as a popular folk song she also heard growing up. The Duke calms down once he thinks it was a harmless mistake and crawls under the covers like a child. Unexpectedly, he agrees to give her another 5 minutes, in which she can do whatever she wants. After finally finishing the song, the Duke is sound asleep. I guess facing his trauma and reconnecting with the good memories of his younger years put some of his demons to bed. Literally! From that day on, Lauria sings the Duke to sleep every night. One time, just as she's beginning, the Duke stops her with a question instead. He seems to feel guilty that her working hours have extended, since she now also has the duty of putting both him and the kids to sleep. He's worried that she'll get overworked and fall ill, so he orders her to get up 2 hours later than usual, promising to hire 2 extra maids to put the kids to bed and get them to breakfast. So he's going to hire more people just to make sure this one girl gets enough sleep? I think we can all see what's happening here. Laria tries to refuse, but an order is an order. His kindness seems to have changed something in her mind, too. While he's falling asleep that night, she can't help but think how attractive he looks. The next morning, she struggles to relax, wondering if the kids will be okay without her. It's just not in her nature to lie in, so eventually she gets up and heads to work at the same time as usual, ignoring all the maids hanging around to do her job. Later, Jeanette falls over because of a guard, so Knight Pernil comes over to introduce himself. If you remember, he's practically Nocturn's right-hand man. But Laria doesn't remember writing a character like him. He just appeared out of thin air. That's kind of weird in itself, but more so is the fact that he sort of insults her during his introduction. Laria forgives him for it, but remains pretty brisk and cold after he bids her adieu. She's not stupid. He was clearly trying to suss her out, though it's not exactly clear why. He originally came over to tell her that the butler had a task, so later, Laria arrives at the office of Mr. Simon. He starts spinning this tale about a pillar on her bedroom ceiling being eaten by mice. Whatever the reason, he asks her not to enter the room for the time being and guides her to a temporary one instead. As you might have guessed, the temporary room is unbelievably elegant, decked out with gold on every surface and big enough for an entire family. She asks for a smaller room, claiming she isn't comfortable somewhere like this. Although if you ask me, I don't know why she's complaining. I would have said thank you very much and been done with it. Simon won't budge, so Laria is given no option but to move in with Mary, her fellow maid and now her roommate. For the staff, this is way worse than their future Duchess being in the tiny room she was in before. So Simon caves and lets her go back to that one. It seems the repairs weren't that serious after all. The next day, Laria is walking through the hallways with Mary when she overhears some servants gossiping about her and the Duke's relationship. Specifically the whole tucking him into bed thing. You can see why that would be easy to misunderstand. Suddenly, everything becomes clear. That's why the staff have taken such an interest in her. They think Lady Sherwood and the Duke are passionately in love. The rumor spread faster than she can handle, and soon, it has even reached the kids. Jeanette has a tantrum at bedtime because she says it's not fair that Laria is sleeping with Dad and not with them. Oh no, I would be so embarrassed. And it only gets worse when suddenly the Duke appears at the door, having heard every word. They said they wanted to sleep with Laria and their father, so Nocturn comes closer and asks if they want to try that just once. When they agree, he promises that they'll give it a go tomorrow night. What is this man doing? I get wanting to be close to the kids, but isn't it a little cheeky to ask his maid to sleep in the same bed too? Damn, this man really knows what he's doing, doesn't he? When they get to his room that evening, Nocturne asks if she's angry at him. She answers of course not, especially because she knows he has no other intention than to help her appease the kids. Right, Nocturne? After that, he gets all moody, which is a dead giveaway that he thinks he's just been friend-zoned. Still, sweet, innocent Laria doesn't pick up on it. The next evening, the kids are all excited to sleep with their favorite maid, who comes out in a gorgeous peach pink nightgown. She walks them over to the Duke's bedroom and bumps into the man himself on the way. He's graduated from the Laria School of Smiles and Hugs and manages to pick up Mikhail with ease, giving him his first ever hug from Dad. After that small success, they head straight to his bedroom, trying to keep the kids from running all over the place and breaking things. The Duke doesn't seem to be able to look at Laria in her pretty dress with her hair down. He's literally blushing and stammering like a little girl. He even makes a comment about how good she smells and runs a hand through her hair. The two are getting lost in each other's eyes when a sudden crash from across the room breaks them up. Great timing, Jeanette. Thank you. A few minutes later, the four of them are all tucked up in bed. The kids already sound asleep. The Duke isn't even trying to sleep. He's just staring at Laria. They're both trying to be quiet for the sake of the children, which makes them seem like a real family. Even in the 3 months since she arrived, she already feels closer to them than anyone from her past life. But that closeness feels dangerous, especially since she is not the one destined to end up with the Duke. But boy, is he making it hard. He keeps reaching over to touch her lips, making her heart skip a beat. But even the slightest bit of movement wakes the kids, so they soon give up on any communication and fall asleep. The next morning, the Duke has brought servants to prepare breakfast in the bedroom, which is a sweet gesture. Nocturn says it's because he couldn't be bothered to walk to the dining room, but I think we all know better than that. He doesn't say much and only speaks in short clipped sentences, so Lauria thinks he didn't enjoy the big sleepover. As she's walking out of his room with the kids, she asks if they should make that a one-time thing and go back to normal in the future. He says yes, but I have a feeling he wasn't quite being honest. When they get back to the kids' room, Lauria asks if they enjoyed sleeping with their dad, and surprisingly, they say yes. Another win for the Daddy Duke project. But then Mikhail asks when she and the Duke are going to get married so that she can be his real mother? Uh-oh. Why do kids always ask the most intense questions? Like, how is she supposed to answer that? Not only is it incredibly personal, it also makes her feel awful. The plan, according to the plot, is still for her to leave the moment the heroine shows up. Then she will be the one they call mother, and they will never see Laria again. Will they be able to handle it? Never mind the kids. Will she be able to handle it? She tries to laugh the question off, promising to tell them later, while her heart aches keeping the truth from them. A few days later, and she's acting like everything is normal, back to her old routine despite the contracted change in her hours. Mary finally puts her foot down and tells her to take a break, promising to take care of the kids with the other maids for a while. It's kind of her, but the truth is that Laria is only working so hard to keep from remembering the truth about the plot and what will inevitably happen the moment the protagonist arrives. She's having a little moment thinking about it when Mikhail and Jeanette rush into the room. He has finally collected all his stamps, the little champ, and declares that his only wish is a kiss from Laria. Well, that's easy to grant. She obeys his wish with a peck on the cheek, but the cheeky boy asks for more. He's really his father's son. Jeanette nearly blows a fuse out of jealousy, and soon the three of them are chasing each other around the room, blowing kisses on every cheek. Aw, it's such a cute sight. But I can't help but thinking this is only going to make it harder when she eventually has to go. A few days pass, and a letter arrives from the Sherwood family. They have attempted to contact their daughter several times now. These days, she gets 3 letters a day, but she ignores them all. There's nothing those devils could say to make her change her mind about the engagement. That day, Lauria takes the kids out into town for a walk around the markets. When they return to the estate in the evening, she hears some commotion by the gates and walks out to investigate. It's a blonde woman with a familiar voice, begging the guards to let her talk to Laria. It's Laria's stepmother, though she looks much more disheveled than usual. And why would that woman come all the way to the Duke's estate to meet the daughter she hated so much? Her stepbrother Adolf is here too. Literally, the 2 people who bullied her and used to make her life a living hell are now begging the guards just for a chance to talk to her. What the heck is going on? Laria tries to get inside the mansion, but they spot her and start yelling. She asks more guards to send them away, but suddenly Adolf has jumped the gate. He grabs Laria, asking if she is really never going to return if she hates them that much. Yeah, you put salt in all her drinks and treated her like an animal. Why would she not hate you? Eventually, the Sherwoods are dragged away. When Lauria is safely back inside the mansion, she opens a few of their letters out of curiosity, surprised at the intensity with which her evil brother had pleaded. They clearly put a lot of care into each letter, filling them with apologies and regrets, trying to make up for the way they treated her. Which surprises the author, since she wrote their characters, she didn't think them capable of regret. But here they are, apologizing and trying to right all their wrongs. She's interrupted by a summons from the Duke, who wants to renew their contract. They're only halfway into it, but already he wants her for 3 more years and is willing to pay her 5 times her current salary. In advance. That's gotta be crazy money. Say yes, Laria! Stop thinking about the plot and just settle down with the very handsome, very rich Duke. It's a crazy good deal, but this foolish girl can't get the protagonist out of her head, so she tells the Duke she can't accept it. He doesn't seem happy about it. He starts thinking back on the last 6 months, trying to figure out why she won't stay. The Duke is confused more than anything. Part of the deal with hysterical syndrome is that he gains superior abilities, one of which is his ability to see through people to their character beneath. It allows him to distinguish between villains and fools, and has helped him become successful in such a short time. When he looks into Laria Sherwood's eyes, he sees an essence which does not belong in his world. It makes him wonder sometimes if she's even human. The Duke has been suspicious about Laria for some time now, and is determined to find out the truth about her. How can she be so determined to give love to the kids when she got none from her own family? And why does her essence sometimes change colors before his very eyes? Sometimes he thinks she's suffering. That's why he decided to announce their engagement early at the dinner party, because he noticed a note of sorrow inside her. Ever since then, her essence has been slowly changing and he can't tell why. When she's happy and playing with the kids, she shines so brightly that he wants her all to himself. But then his father will appear in his head and tell him to think only for the sake of the family, pushing aside all personal feelings. Ugh, I'm getting dizzy just trying to keep up with him. This is literally the definition of overthinking. Just tell her you love her, idiot! Like all men, he's too proud to open up without first knowing how she's feeling or how she would respond. So instead of opening his heart, he offered her a contract. Real romantic, Nocturn. But he is legitimately concerned about why her color keeps changing, and how she seems so sad all the time. So when he heard from Mr. Simon that the Sherwood family attempted to reach her, he panicked. And that was how the contract was made, because he was so worried other people would end up stealing her away from him. Finally, back to the present, Laria plays off her refusal by saying 3 years is too long to commit to right away. It makes him think that the Sherwoods got through to her, that she's decided to go back to her family. After all, they're engaged. Even if it's fake, doesn't that kind of imply, forever? He's conflicted, but he doesn't want to force anything, so he agrees to extend for only another 6 months, and triples her salary for the time being, asking her to reconsider the contract in future. Then he mentions the Sherwood visit, and Laria freezes. He suggests they announce their impending marriage to the rest of society. That will make her family give up. Laria doesn't really have a choice, so she agrees and asks how he intends to break the news. The Duke's big idea is for the two of them to attend the royal prom. Together. The prom is the largest in the kingdom, held at the royal palace every half year. Anyone who is anyone will be there, and that means they'll have to put on a good show. Laria is hesitant, but Nocturne says that isn't an offer, it's an order. At this point, I'm starting to think the Duke's love language is contracts and orders. It seems to be the only way he can express his affection. So she agrees. Not like she had any choice anyway. But there's one tiny little problem. Laria can't dance. She's not a real noble, remember? She never had dancing lessons and has never been to anything like a prom. Nocturne thinks it must be because her evil family locked her up and made her stay at home, which makes him so mad that his powers start seeping out. That means it's time for lessons. From now on, Laria will have formal dance training with Viscountess Burnett. The Duke likes to step in occasionally and help too. Apparently, she'll learn faster with a partner. Nice one, buddy. Real slick. With the kids supporting her from the sidelines and the Duke pressed up very close against her, Laria does her best to learn quickly so that this whole thing can be over sooner. But she's a natural klutz. At one point, she falls backward, giving Nocturne the perfect opportunity to catch her like a true gentleman. And giving Laria the perfect chance to look at his chest. But who wouldn't have a quick peek? A little flustered, she asks to take a break. The Duke says she's far too weak if she needs a rest after only 2 hours. She'll never learn to dance in time for the prom at this rate, so he suggests they decrease her work hours to save her energy. Hearing that makes Laria so mad that she agrees to get back to practice straight away, just to prove herself. Despite falling into the Duke's trap, her footwork is a lot better after that, and the two of them move perfectly in sync. Even the kids think they look good together. A few days pass, and soon the ball is only 2 weeks away. Lauria is readying the Duke for bed when he compliments her dancing progress. From out of nowhere, she comes out with this whole speech about how grateful she is to him. Because who else would do this much for an employee when they have no relationship whatsoever and are only fake engaged? Ouch. That's not setting a boundary, that's called crushing dreams. And the Duke is crushed. I mean, she hasn't said anything that isn't true, but it still hurts to hear. And he still isn't sure that she's satisfied with her life here. He assumes that his feelings have only grown through misunderstanding and is suddenly angry that he let his guard down. All these memories of his past come flashing back to him, reminding him of the kid's father and how he broke his trust. While he's reliving his pain, Laria is watching him shake and pant. It looks like a panic attack to me, but she is certain he's about to have a hysterical episode. And that means she's in danger. She has to make a choice between running away or trying to calm his symptoms before he goes too far. She wants to call for help, but anyone who enters the room will be in danger too. Before she can make a decision, the Duke reaches out and grabs her, pinning her beneath him on the bed. He starts biting her neck, which is probably not as hot as it sounds since Laria is screaming for him to stop. Not only is she scared, but she's thinking of the kids, and how will he have to face them if he kills her? Begging him to wake up, she just about manages to get through to him. When the Duke returns to his senses, the first thing he sees is blood on his hands, and Laria on the bloodstained sheets beneath him. Oh, poor guy. This is going to kill him. Immediately, Nocturn freaks out. He's trembling, asking if she's okay and even hanging his head in shame. Laria, the one who actually nearly just died, pulls herself together to comfort him. No one else could be as understanding in this situation except the very author who made him the way he is. She knows he couldn't help it, but still, he can't help but feel terrible. Purnell and the other soldiers storm in, too late, and find him quietly crying in front of his fiancée. They're shocked to see that she's only injured and still alive and breathing, which makes her the only person to have ever lived through one of his attacks. Purnell escorts her to a nurse and later returns to reassure his master that she'll be all right. He joined the Blackwell forces way back in the day when they were still at war. Though he was young, the Duke rented mercenaries to secure their own forces because no knights would fight for them. But the mercenaries betrayed the Duke and sent him into a hysterical episode on the battlefield. He slaughtered everyone in sight, enemies and allies alike. Purnell was there to watch the bloodshed sink in and knew the Duke regretted every one. He decided to join him and help him form a guard that he could trust. And just like on that day, Purnell now hands him a handkerchief to wipe the blood off his hands. He knows that the Duke will live with this for a long time now. It's a miracle that Laria walked away, but he still hurt her. The knight tries to reassure his master that this is a sign of progress. It's a good thing she called the guard so early, as soon as she noticed the first symptom of his condition. But that makes the Duke pause. How could she know the first symptom? Uh-oh, busted. I feel like she's going to have to answer some serious questions the next time they meet. Back in Lauria's quarters, Mary is making a fuss over the wound. Lady Sherwood assures her she is fine, but the doctor, Frederica, is also surprised since she's the first victim to ever come back from an attack alive. They ask if something unusual happened during the attack, but Lauria isn't sure. Although she invented the character and the syndrome, the causes and remedies invented themselves, so she's not sure what exactly she did that stopped him from going full bloodlust. Haunted by the expression on his face, she wants to find out more about the syndrome and returns to Frederica after dark. She explains exactly what happened during the attack, step by step. He only stopped after she begged him to wake up, but surely other victims have done that before, so it can't be special. Frederica listens carefully. She then reveals that the hysterical syndrome isn't a real disease. At least, it doesn't exist in the world of medicine. There aren't any similar cases or links to any other mental disorders on record. She has no evidence, but Frederica believes that if Lauria stays by the Duke's side, his hysteria will slowly get better. I mean, she's already brightened up his home and helped his relationship with his kids. so it doesn't sound too far-fetched. Frederica literally gets on her knees begging the lady to stay, so no pressure or anything. The next day, she tries to go and see the Duke, but Pernille blocks her at the door, saying he has a mild cold and refusing to let her see him. A little dejected and very worried about her Duke, Laria carries on with the rest of her duties that day, sorting out a fight between Jeanette and Mikhail at lunch. At least she gets Mikhail to apologize for shouting, but that Jeanette is a menace. She just yells back and calls her brother an idiot before storming off by herself. Does anyone else think she's kind of a brat? Laria's top priority is still finding information on the syndrome, so she asks Mary to look after the kids and wanders out to the town that afternoon. It doesn't take long to find the shopkeeper who sold them the eggs. Laria tells her they seemed expired and asks for a refund. So the shopkeeper brings her around a corner to a secret passage to the Empire's best information guild. Kind of a weird password, but okay. Hidden behind an ordinary grocer's is a league of investigators who form the guild Brattarko. The shopkeep introduces herself as Masa, captain of the action team. She cracks open one of the eggs brought by Laria, which contains a request to investigate insanity. Masa is immediately suspicious. Everyone in the Empire knows about the Blackwell curse, so they think she must be looking for a weakness in his condition. So Laria hands her another egg with sensitive information and asks her to think again. She disappears upstairs, where the author knows the guild leader will be listening carefully. The only traits she established about the guild leader were that he really liked eggs and was a bit obsessed with the Holy Kingdom and its goddess. She tailored her information to these interests, and luckily, it seems to have worked. Masa returns from speaking with the guild leader and agrees to accept her request. On the way back home, Laria is knocked over by a woman yelling a string of insults behind her. A silver-haired man appears to help her to her feet with a suspicious-looking mark on his cheek. I think it's safe to assume this is the womanizer that Lady was referring to. He seems very familiar, but the man confirms they have never met, though he doesn't waste a chance to flirt and kisses her hand before passing on. The next second, Lauria is suddenly grabbed from behind. Was that whole thing a setup? Back at the mansion, Pernille is doing his best to get the Duke out of his room by proposing a load of horrible things that could have happened to Lauria out in town. He's mostly joking, but the knight has no idea how close he is to the truth. Because at this very moment, Lauria is being kidnapped. She wakes to the scent of eucalyptus and rotten eggs. Don't ask me how she managed to identify that. She just did, okay? Gagged and strapped to a chair, she looks up to find none other than the guild leader of Brattarko, Petro. I guess her tip was just a bit too good, and now it's landed her in trouble. They relieve her of the gag as Petro turns to open a window, shooting her a winning smile. He already suspected she wasn't an ordinary noble from the information she gave up, but knowing his name too? Damn, Lauria, keep your mouth shut! She didn't think twice about revealing her information, not realizing these guys were so obsessed with the goddess that they would literally kidnap her to find out more. How is she going to wriggle her way out of this one? She doesn't show her fear, standing her ground and telling Petro that threatening her won't get him anywhere. He agrees. Instead, he could use a dangerous contract curse or even confession magic. Lauria panics the moment she hears those words. One of the guild members is just lowering a hex over her head when suddenly, the door bursts open to reveal Adolf? What's he doing here? Her baby brother doesn't hesitate. He knees the guild member right in the face and unties Lauria. Apparently, Adolf is pretty handy with a sword. In just a few minutes, Petro and his lackey are black and blue and tied up on the floor. Petro threatens to sue them, but then Norman shows up, and by some incredible stroke of luck, it turns out he's one of the youngest judges in the Empire and something of a legal legend. How convenient. Faced with a swordsman and a lawyer, Petro turns his attention to Lauria and begs for her forgiveness. Instead, she offers him a contract, with that binding magic he was talking about. Brattarko has to find her the information she's after and are not allowed to harm her in any way. And if they break it, well, let's just say the Sherwoods will take care of that. Once that mess is over, Lauria's brothers lead her back to the one who told them she was kidnapped in the first place, the silver-haired stranger from earlier. But that still doesn't explain how they knew where she was being held, so the boys explain their version of events. Adolf and Norman were in the market and spotted her walking up to Masa. They knew what alley she disappeared into after walking off with her, but couldn't find an entrance. Then, when the silver guy bid her goodbye later on, he noticed that someone was following her. He bumped into Norman and Adolf by chance, and while they were searching for her, he smelled eggs and eucalyptus and knew she was in danger. You see, it's actually the scent of a drug named Rockabye of the Goddess, which acts as a sleeping pill often used in kidnappings. They burst in, and the rest is history. Although she's angry at her brothers for following her, they did save her from what was clearly a nasty situation. So she thanks them and offers to repay the favor to the silver-haired guy. He just wants the chance to help her again, which sounds about as suspicious as it gets. Just before she leaves with the Sherwood boys, he tells her his name, Henrique. He also gives her his contract in the guild and says she can get in touch with him there in future. Once the Sherwoods are alone in the carriage, they start the same old nonsense about wanting to talk with her, being very careful not to overstep any boundaries or make her feel uncomfortable. They're so sincere that she agrees to meet them just once. They did save her after all. In future, she will send a letter when she is ready to talk, and for the time being, she asks them to stop following her around and trying to break into the mansion. It's weird, guys. All seems just about right with the world. Laria is making amends with her family, she's safe from the guild, and has been delivered home in one piece. There's only one problem. She came back in the Sherwood carriage, and the Duke knows it. The fact that the Sherwoods dare to approach her again makes him furious. As his blood begins to boil, he feels the presence of his ancestors at his shoulder, trying to convince him to use Blackwell's power to get what he wants. Pernille is also attempting to persuade the Duke. He says he should talk to Laria rather than brooding and scheming on his own, which is actually very good advice, but the Duke is too emotional right now. He grabs Pernille by his collar and tells him not to stick his nose where it doesn't belong. Despite the burning fury in his eyes, the man somehow finds the courage to speak again, claiming he will only hurt himself if he goes on this way. The Grand Duke is just saying he'll even lock her up if that's what it takes when a knock at the door announces Laria's arrival. He refuses to see her. In his mind, it's better to keep her under lock and key, at least until the Imperial Party. After people see them together at such an official event, there will be no going back. Laria, of course, has no idea what dark thoughts are coursing through his head. If he'd only let her in, she would have explained the meeting with the Sherwoods, but instead, she goes about her business as usual. The next morning, she brings tea and all the best desserts for Janet to cheer her out of her bad mood. The princess seems to think she's in trouble, since she and Mikhail have been fighting. Poor little thing is too young to understand her own emotions. It's really not that serious. Laria gently encourages her to apologize to Mikhail, and does such a good job that the princess gets up to do it right away. She bursts into her brother's room and delivers a somewhat aggressive but adorable apology. As usual, Mikhail is the softer one and accepts her straight away. And then they're straight back to fighting. That's siblings for you. For the next couple of days, Laria finds it impossible to meet Nocturn. Pernille just keeps telling her that he's not feeling well, so she starts to worry that it might be serious. Next week, she's going to see the whole Sherwood family, and she really wants to discuss it with him. Of course, he's too busy sulking, so she spends all night tossing and turning about the visit. The next morning, she gets her ears pierced by Frederick and asks if her flu symptoms often follow episodes of hysteria. But Frederick tells her the Duke has been in perfect health since the hysteria. Actually, he's never once been sick, even since he was a little kid. Laria rushes straight to the Duke's room, where Pernille starts the usual excuses about him not being able to see her today. Laria is having none of it. With a stone-cold expression, she asks if his symptoms are serious, and Pernille tries his best to cover what is now clearly a lie. She barges past him, walking straight up to the Duke while he's still talking absent-mindedly to his guard about the best way to make an excuse. Ugh, he's totally shameless. He immediately claims the flu is real. He's just feeling conveniently better these days. But he's wearing a thin shirt and the window is open. Does he think she's some kind of idiot? He tries to shoo her away once again, but Laria blurts out that she's meeting the Sherwoods next week. He starts getting angry, but she's not scared of him now. He's acting like a baby, trying to keep her away and talking through butlers and guards. He's the one who's so desperate to keep her as his wife. If he really values their relationship that much, then shouldn't they meet and discuss important things like this face to face? To Laria, the only answer can be that he just doesn't care that much. So she asks for vacation day for the visit and watches him give in once again. A true coward, he doesn't even try to reconcile with her for the following days. Seriously, even his kids are more mature than him. The day of the visit finally comes around and still they haven't spoken. She arrives at the Sherwood estate to find her family members waiting at the door with awkward smiles. Despite the discomfort, they really are excited to see her. They rush her to the living room for a cup of tea and a conversation, which feels weird for Lauria. The last time she was in this house, she was being sent away as the burdensome daughter that everyone hated. Now they're being super careful not to offend her. Suddenly, something comes over Lauria and she slumps, nearly fainting. Purnell is there to catch her, but she still seems a little shaken when she's back on her feet. He remembers an interaction he had back at the Blackwell estate, where Mary the maid warned him that Lauria isn't doing too well these days and doesn't sleep much. Mary asked him to look out for her at the Sherwood mansion, but when they reach the sitting room, he is refused entry. The Sherwoods say they don't want a stranger standing by while they have a personal conversation, but honestly, that sounds mega sus to me. Purnell makes it very clear to the Count that wherever Lauria goes, he goes too, by order of the Grand Duke. And they can't refuse him. Actually, they try to, but Lauria convinces them to let him in. After that tense encounter, her mother-in-law tries to make conversation and expresses how much she missed her. But Lauria's head is filled with memories of her time here. She can't move past all the cruelty and the harsh words they called her. So with that in mind, she asks the whole family why they were so mean to her before. Count Sherwood claims that it was partly because of her mother, who passed away from a disease. His perfect life began to fall apart, so he married the current countess, and claims that it was also for her sake, so that she would have a complete family. He didn't want anyone to be able to look down on them, so he assembled the family like a parts of a machine and focused on his business. The more he talks, the more obvious it becomes that he hasn't got any intention of truly apologizing. In fact, he offers to forgive her for leaving home, which is apparently unforgivable in the usual circumstances. I can't believe this guy! He turns to Norman for backup, but his eldest son thinks differently. Finally, someone with a conscience! He suspects that his mother and younger brother might feel the same, and promises to tell Lauria the story she's been curious about for so many years. He promises to tell the truth. Their mother, the Count's first wife, did indeed pass away due to sickness. But that sickness worsened after she was born, so Norman ended up resenting her, even though their mother had made him promise to love Lauria after she was gone. Based on the symptoms he describes, it's clear that their mother was suffering from postpartum depression, something which probably wouldn't have been so bad if the Count wasn't such a cold-hearted husband. He was just as horrible with his current wife, and even told her to her face that he only married her as part of a business deal. He pressured her into fulfilling her duty by having a kid and acting the part of a happy housewife. What a psycho! As a result, she feared that her and Adolf could be ejected from the house at any time, and used her power to exert authority over Lauria and keep her underfoot. And Adolf was just young enough that he didn't know better. He copied his mother, and then the rest is history. Although their father seems offended, the others are all wholeheartedly apologetic for their actions. They are literally begging for her forgiveness, while the Count stays stubborn and insists it's all her fault. Lauria can't take their shouting and yells at them all to shut up. They're just being selfish, acting on their own guilt and thinking that an apology will fix decades of mistreatment. The Count, however, doesn't have any guilt at all and slaps her for having the audacity to speak out. He tries to hit her again, saying he should have been even crueler to such a disobedient young daughter. That guy is really insane. But does anyone else think the whole family is messed up? Lauria should just stay as far as possible from these freaks. Purnell tries to bring her to her feet, but then Lauria suddenly collapses. Nocturn, who has no idea what a mess the meeting has become, is back at the Blackwell estate when his kids walk in, having a fight over a teddy bear. At first, they're vicious, but then they give in and make peace. Finally, the Grand Duke gets the picture. That's what he should have done with Lauria. I can't believe he needed a literal demonstration by his own kids to realize that. He promises to give the kids a gift for being so well behaved. But while they're deciding what to ask for, a guard rushes in and announces that something is wrong with Lady Lauria. Uh-oh, is this going to make him hysterical? Meanwhile, Lauria is having a kind of hallucination, watching her father raise his hand against her again, calling her a disgrace to the family. But this time, it's not her who takes the hit, but the real Lauria, the original villain from the novel. It makes the author panic. If Lauria was being treated like this the whole time, then no wonder she became a villain. It's not the character's fault, but the author's for writing a story with so much pain and cruelty. The vision fast forward to another occasion when Lauria broke a vase on accident and her mother lost her temper. Even though Adolf did the same thing and wasn't scolded at all. Watching her be yelled at and abused, even as a young child, makes the author feel horrible. As if that wasn't bad enough, the memory of the real Lauria suddenly notices her and gives her a hug. She's wanted to meet her for a long time, she says, and asks her what she thinks. Wait, is this some kind of Inception split personality situation? Did the real Lauria show her all these memories on purpose? After a flashback to her own life and the pain she endured in reality, the author embraces the young Lauria with tears in her eyes and apologizes for taking advantage of her for the sake of the plot. But to her surprise, young Lauria isn't mad. The past can't be changed, but the future can. So she asks the author to make everyone happy this time, to finally finish the story. The author promises to fulfill her request, and then she tumbles back to reality through her consciousness. When she comes back around, she's in the Blackwell estate, in her own bed, being cared for by the Duke. I guess he finally put aside his pride for her sake. He's concerned for Laria, but while she's still asleep, he has more urgent matters to deal with, like what to do with the Sherwoods. He walks in on the Count, yelling at his family to come up with an excuse for Laria's fainting. Always trying to make himself look like the victim, this guy. When Nocturn arrives, he falls silent, as he should. The Grand Duke tells him that he should be ashamed for losing his temper and hitting his own daughter. The Count has been slowly losing his mind throughout this entire process, going from outrage to outrage as the truth of his daughter's relationship with the Duke was revealed. From the beginning, he thought about nothing except trying to control her, making sure she never disobeyed the Duke in case she put the Sherwood clan in danger. Of course, the daughter he remembers is the villainess from the book, not the meek and gentle Laria of today. And the rest of the family had no choice but to go along with his plans, because they were terrified of his temper. Of course, that's no excuse, and the Duke certainly won't have any sympathy for them either. Ignorant of his anger, the Count tries to assure Nocturn that he was only trying to caution his daughter, since she's going to be Lady Blackwell soon. He makes it seem like it was all for the Duke's benefit, which really pushes him over the edge. Since he pointed out the close business relationship between the two of them, the Duke announces an investigation into their taxes, which basically means he's going to dig through their business until he finds a problem. No matter how clean they are, he will find something. The Count is furious, but too afraid to speak out. So the Duke whispers in his ear that he should never see his daughter again, slowly wrapping a hand around his neck. Just as her father is beginning to choke, Lauria arrives, disappointed to see the men deciding things on her behalf again. Finally, the voice of reason has arrived. She tells the Duke to let go of her father and calm down. Although that doesn't mean she disagrees with him. In fact, while they sit down to discuss things as a group, she's thinking of the most satisfying way to get revenge on her family members. Well, that's what she wants to do, but then she promised the young lady Laria that she would make sure everyone ended up happy. So she gives up her chance for revenge and offers them a chance for forgiveness. They have to start by learning how to love, since clearly there's not an ounce of love in any of their hearts. That means giving donations, volunteering, going to orphanages, all that stuff. For her father, she especially asks him to shut up every once in a while so that someone else can voice their opinion instead. This is the only way that they can earn her forgiveness, she warns them. So they'd better take it seriously. While her father is still losing it over the tax investigation, the remaining family members step outside to bid her farewell with a parting gift of tea to help her sleep. Looks like they're on the right path already. On the way back home, the Duke announces that he wants to apologize, surprising Laria so much that she starts laughing. But he's deadly serious. After deliberately avoiding her, lying to her, and causing her to have trouble sleeping, he does actually have a lot to be sorry for. Laria seems to be in a generous mood. She forgives him, letting him off with a warning that if any of it happens again, she won't be so kind. Anyone else kind of loving this girl boss energy on her? As if that wasn't enough drama for one day, we now switch to the Emperor Gunther, who is playing the piano like he's an extra in Phantom of the Opera. He is disturbed by a hooded figure who kneels before him, apologizing for the interruption. The Emperor slaps him with a smile and then asks for the information. The informant doesn't bat an eye and explains that the next royal ball will be attended by the Duke Blackwell and his fiancée. This news surprises Gunther since Lauria hasn't had her debut in society yet, and Nocturn usually hates these kind of events. He commands his servant to summon the tailors and maids of the Queen's palace. Something tells him that couple will be causing a commotion at the ball. Back at the Blackwell estate, Lauria has recovered her full strength, but is still being told to rest by her overprotective fiancé and his children. She insists that she's ready to continue their dancing lessons, which seems to have the double effect of improving her abilities and her relationship with Nocturn. Both he and their teacher praises her for improving so much in such a short time. As it's their last lesson, she gives their teacher a gift to share with her grandson. Then, once the others have left and it's just her and Nocturn, their usual awkwardness returns. He asks to practice with her one last time. Flustered, Lauria accepts, paying attention to every sound and scent. As if the gods of romance were watching over them, she suddenly trips, causing them to fall into one another. Instead of retreating, the Duke takes a step forward and asks his fiancée if she would meet him at 4 p.m. today. Laria has no idea what he has planned, but they end up at a boutique with the children to look at samples for the ball. Every design is extravagant and beautiful, but the Duke picks one out himself and asks her to try it on. The dress is crazy expensive and the materials aren't all ready, but as usual, the Duke just has to click his fingers and anything becomes possible. The dress isn't finished yet, but Laria still looks incredible in the deep blue night sky themed gown. The Duke is speechless and then demands to buy it at once. Laria wants to refuse, but if she says it's a money issue, then she might affect the Duke's reputation in front of the dressmaker. So she has no choice but to wear the beautiful dress and be the envy of every man and woman at the royal ball. Such a hard life our Laria is living. When the night of the ball finally arrives, rumor surrounds Laria before she even walks through the doors. Everyone has heard about how the Duke treated the Sherwoods, so people are surprised that their daughter would still attend a public event at his side. But when she steps in the room, arm in arm with the Duke in their gorgeous matching outfits, everyone falls silent. People thought their relationship was all political, but one look at the expressions on the couple corrects all the misunderstandings. The Duke warns her that lots of people will approach them, like hounds coming to sniff their prey. And he's right. The first couple to introduce themselves are Marina Hope and her husband Earl Hope, who actually seem very sweet and excited to meet the two of them. Marina is overflowing with compliments for Lauria's gown and her necklace, which is a famous piece known as Ocean's Tears. Apparently, it contains one of the largest diamonds in all the land. Nocturn really went overboard this time, and it seems like Lauria had no idea. Lady Hope asks if she'd like to come and sit near her in the meeting of the noble ladies, an idea that makes Nocturne suddenly turn dark. Despite his frightening appearance, Lauria accepts and tells him to chill out. This is a party after all. He sends them off with a smile, and soon Lauria is surrounded by cute and friendly girls who are all delighted to make her acquaintance. They want to hear stories about her relationship with the Duke, since they seem like such a romantic couple. It gets her thinking. Why would the Duke gift such expensive things to a girl who is little more than a maid? I can't believe she's still clueless. I mean, even strangers can tell he's mad for her. Before she can tell any tales, a girl comes rushing into the ladies' room with tears in her eyes. This is Lady Lisa, who hasn't attended a ball in quite some time. She wasn't planning to come to this one either, but her young son is tired of her missing out and using him as an excuse. He got angry and forced her to go, so now she's upset. After having kids, she was too busy to join the usual social events. Lisa doesn't even have a nanny. She raises him completely by herself. He used to be all cute and innocent, but as he's grown bigger, his words and actions have become harsher. Laria suspects that she hasn't left the house much for any reason since having children. The other ladies think she's being rude, but actually, Laria is right on the money. Lady Lisa admits that she gained a lot of weight after becoming a mother, which made her too insecure to leave the house. Laria also suspects that she was likely suffering from postpartum depression, just like her birth mother. It's only natural for a woman's weight and hormones to change after having kids, but being pent up in the house all the time would have made her frustrated. It's likely that her son noticed and has become frustrated too. Laria advises her to be more adventurous for the sake of her son, and that includes having fun tonight. Lady Lisa is grateful for the advice and even invites her to come and visit her home sometime. She hasn't yet answered when suddenly her necklace slips off. You know, the super expensive one with the biggest diamond on the continent? She grabs it and rushes out of the ladies' room, running right into her fiancé with Ocean's Tears in her hand. She gives it over to him and promises to return both the necklace and the dress after the ball. Laria feels awkward about wearing such expensive gifts and comments that his future lovers might be jealous if they find out. But Nocturne says that she's his lover right now. In his mind, there isn't anyone waiting in the future. He can't imagine being with another girl. Laria turns bright red while he slips the necklace back over her shoulders, trying to resist the urge to kiss her. Oh my god! Is this going to be the moment he finally confesses? We'll never know, because Emperor Gunther walks in at the perfect moment, smiling like he knew exactly what they were about to do. Gunther Franz Christoph Ruprecht is the center of power in the Empire and Nocturne's chief rival. In the novel, he acts as the second villain after Lauria goes back home. Of course, a lot of characters have been very different in reality to how they were in the novel. Maybe he won't be quite so evil this time around? Laria introduces herself politely to the Emperor while Nocturn glares at him for interrupting what was about to be a very steamy moment. Gunther is amused by his irritable attitude and invites him to sit down for a chat with him and his wife. For all intents and purposes, he seems perfectly charming, but Lauria knows better than to let her guard down. The Empress, his wife, is also an unfamiliar character, so she has even more reason to be careful. From a recent newspaper article, she knows they have a child. His name is Prince Cedric, and he's about the same age as Mikhail and Janet. The Empress is about to suggest they have the kids become friends when the Emperor interrupts, rudely claiming that women always talk nonsense when they get together. Excuse me? The Empress withdraws and becomes nervous after being cautioned by her husband. But for Nocturn, that's basically like a green flag. He boldly states that he doesn't see anything wrong with talking about kids, since they're all parents after all. Disagreeing with the Emperor so forcefully is something only the Grand Duke can do. Anyone else would probably pay a dear price for such insolence, but Nocturn is almost as powerful as the Emperor himself. But Gunther does still strike back, mentioning the bad blood between the Sherwood and Blackwell families, and how any wrong move might threaten their reputation. When the Emperor leaves, the atmosphere is tense to say the least. Well, at least we now know Gunther is going to be exactly the same in this world as he was in the book. Although, I think that was pretty clear already. They return to the ball arm in arm, making quite the entrance among a crowd of curious nobles. Her dancing also received lots of compliments, as does their connection as a couple. Everyone can see how well matched they are. Everyone except Lauria, that is. They're not doing anything special, but already people are lining up to make her acquaintance. It makes her feel a little awkward, so the Duke offers to run away with her so that they can find a quiet corner alone somewhere. As soon as they finish dancing, he sweeps her off her feet. No, literally. He picks her up bridal style in front of all the guests and rushes her outside to the gardens. Lauria is very surprised, but she can't help but be grateful. All that attention gets exhausting after a while. For looking after her and for showering her with compliments all night, Lauria thanks her fiancé. For once, he puts away his cold and distant side to be romantic and considerate. Someday, that will make him a great lover. Oh, honey, it already has. Why can't she see that this is all a sign of his affection for her? It makes the Duke frustrated that she always talks like she's going to leave. But before he can mention it, a steward arrives with a letter for Lady Sherwood. Somehow, Janet and Mikhail manage to get a letter to the ball saying how much they miss their tutor and father, urging them to come back home as soon as possible. They even drew a picture of the four of them as one happy family. Isn't that sweet? Immediately, Lauria wants to go back. And when she looks at Nocturn with those big puppy eyes, he just can't say no. He agrees, so they sneak out of the ball to go home to the kids. After the festivities have finished, Emperor Gunther is looking out at his grounds with a satisfied expression. The ball went well. This should be a happy occasion, but when he turns around, his wife is on the floor, kneeling in front of him. In one sudden motion, Gunther grabs her by the chin. He spent so much money on her clothes and outfit, but in the end, all eyes were on Lauria tonight. In his anger, the Emperor rips off her necklace, scattering pearls all over the floor. It just makes him even more determined to kill the Grand Duke. Jeez, talk about a sore loser. Oblivious to the Emperor's plans for vengeance, the Blackwell world keeps on turning peacefully over the next few weeks. The Sherwoods' tax investigation was finally completed after a very tedious and painful process. Count Sherwood traveled south to the rest after it was done, while the Countess and her sons visited an orphanage and played with the children. They're actually starting to enjoy it. The kids love Adolf, and Norman teaches them how to read. In a letter to Lauria, the Countess expresses her gratitude for the opportunity. She even asks if they can go together next time. Lauria's heart warms to read the letter, but she's also got a giant pile of other letters from people wanting to be her friend. Ever since the ball, she's been Little Miss Popular. People are sending letters, sending presents. She hardly has any time to respond around looking after the children, which causes a big problem for Purnell and Mary, her personal matchmakers. Because the Duke is busy too, they have no time for each other these days. Purnell and Mary take it upon themselves to restore their romance. Actually, Laria has already accidentally come up with a solution. She wants to throw a party for the Duke and his children, since they were sad not to be able to attend any of the adult parties they've been going to. Mary suggests they assist her with the party preparations, as that will be the best chance for the Duke and his fiancée to spend some time together. They start by suggesting some decoration ideas and tell her to go pick them up in person. That way she can go with Nocturn and turn a chore into a date. But Lauria shatters that idea immediately when she decides to go with Janet and Mikhail instead. Honestly, this girl. Since the party is for the kids, it would be a better idea to get them more involved by making decorations themselves. It's a good idea, so Mary can't refuse. That afternoon, she brings the kids paper and crayons to get them all excited. Luckily, Purnell has a stroke of genius and brought his master right to them. Just like usual, Nocturne is flustered as soon as he lays eyes on her. He tries to escape the situation, but Purnell is already sprinting in the other direction. Smooth, Purnell. Real smooth. Laria invites him to try making some decorations of his own, which excites the kids even further. So he sits down to try drawing, something he's never done before, and seems kind of embarrassed about. Actually, he should stay embarrassed. What the heck is that? Is that supposed to be a bunny rabbit? Janet and Mikhail can't hold back their laughter and make it a competition to draw a better bunny than him. Nocturne is a bit flustered, but once the kids are gone, he recovers himself by gently touching her cheeks to remove a watercolor stain. Yes! There's the Nocturne we know and love! Finally, some of their romance has been recaptured. But as usual, Laria gets embarrassed and rushes away at the first opportunity. To make matters worse, he also has a business trip scheduled for the day of the party, so he won't be attending. There will be plenty of other people to keep her company, though. Lauria had hit two birds with one stone by inviting all the ladies with noble children around the same age as Mikhail and Janet. Lady Lisa even managed to make an appearance. The Sherwoods also received an invite and brought with them the two children from the orphanage. Laria greets them warmly and encourages all the kids to have fun and eat all the snacks they want. But the real star of the show is the Crown Prince, young Cedric, who is dressed far fancier than the other kids. While they're playing around the dinner table, a boy trips on his cloak and panics when the Emperor's son rises from his seat. Actually, Cedric isn't the type to make a big deal about it. He tries to assure the kid that it's fine, but then one of the guards leaps in and screams at the child for being reckless in front of His Majesty. Laria feels the need to step in, but Janet gets there faster. She gets in between the man and the kid and yells right back at him for causing a scene at her party. "That's it, girl! You tell him!" Surprisingly, the guard kneels before her and starts stammering an apology. He tries to place the blame on the little boy who tripped, but Janet won't hear a word. She acts super cool, even using her family's name to intimidate him into backing off. She's definitely her father's daughter, all right. Lauria takes over, asking the Crown Prince to intervene and explain his side of the situation. Cedric, of course, doesn't blame the little boy, and so the guards finally back off and allow the kids to work it out themselves. Laria is extra proud of Janet for being the bigger person for once. As we know, she's usually the one starting arguments, not ending them. She then leads the kids in a game of cricket and even gets the Crown Prince involved. It's cute how they're basically the next generation of nobles, and already they're becoming such good friends. There's only one thing left on the party schedule, but then Mary rushes in to announce that the troupe Laria invited are no longer able to attend. Uh-oh. Could this ruin the whole event? The final activity was a puppet play depicting the most popular fairy tale in the Empire. And now, without the troupe to perform it, they're missing a big finale. Everyone is already hyped for the final event, so she will have to think of something fast. Catching sight of Adolf from across the room, Lauria asks for a favor. And I mean, given the whole earning her forgiveness thing, he can't exactly refuse, can he? So she gathers all the children and gets out the fairy tale book. The children have all heard this story 1,000 times, so at first, they're not very excited. But then Adolf appears in full costume, acting as the villain of the tale while Lauria narrates the story for the kids. And they're totally obsessed. Next is a piñata stuffed full of candy, the cherry on top of a perfect party. The kids are well grinning from ear to ear as they leave, singing the praises of the future Duchess Blackwell, who went to such lengths to entertain the children. Originally, this was all for Mikhail and Janet, but in the end, it's been good for Lauria too. She bonded with Adolf and her stepmother and boosted her reputation with the other noble ladies. The only thing missing is the Grand Duke. Speaking of whom, Nocturne is currently exploring a cave full of buried magic stones with a small expedition team in the mountains. Little does she know, he's thinking of her too, wishing she could keep him company on the dusty roads. Well, then maybe you shouldn't have left, duh. Unfortunately, after the fun of the afternoon, Prince Cedric returns to the palace to face the consequences of attending a party hosted by the Blackwell family. In fact, it seems like his father sent him there specifically to spy on Lauria and the kids. Cedric reports that he had a really fun time and explains the incident with the commoner kid who tripped on his cloak. When his father hears that he not only forgave the kid but gave him no punishment, he is furious. The Empress tries to step in, but she is just as afraid of Gunther as her son is. The prince has clearly done this before. He kneels before his father at once and begs for forgiveness. For once, the Emperor shows him mercy, but in the future, he makes Cedric promise to never forgive commoners or dishonor the royal family. Ugh, Gunther really is the worst. Meanwhile, Laria is back to her hysteria investigation after Petro and the guild reached out with some new information. They found an ancient document referring to hysteria, but they can't translate what it says. Apparently, it will take time to find a translator, so she leaves him to it and promises to meet again soon. Of course, she can't completely trust the guild members, so she resolves to learn about ancient languages herself, just in case they fail or provide the wrong information. Although, I don't know where she's going to find the time between raising the kids and being the most popular lady in town. Getting straight to work, Laria heads to a public library to find a suitable starting point. As she's reaching for a book high upon the shelf, a stranger comes up behind to help, not so subtly touching her hand. It's Henrique, who claims he just so happened to run into her. Yeah, right. I trust this guy about as far as I could throw him. He admits that he was waiting for her to reach out and asks why she looked so sad while reaching for the book. Laria avoids the question and assures him she doesn't need assistance. But he's staring at her with those intense eyes, reminding Laria of his request the last time they met, when he ended up being surprisingly useful. So maybe he could help her now as well. So Laria gives in and shows him the document. He can't quite translate it word for word, but he has a book in a similar language, so there is a way he could uncover its meaning. They agree to meet again tomorrow, allowing him enough time to prepare some materials and ancient texts for the translation. He bids her farewell outside the library, sending her off into the sunset with a mysterious look. Is it just me, or is anyone else crazy suspicious of this guy? The next day, Laria meets him at Henrique's home, where he has already dug up a crazy number of books relevant to the document. Apparently, collecting and deciphering ancient documents goes way back in his family, but I think he's just a little obsessed. Then they get down to business, poring over page after page of potentially important material. Of course, Laria struggles since she's hardly an expert in the field. It all just looks like gibberish to her. Henrique offers her a look at the transformation manual to help compare the old and new styles of writing. And when the opportunity arises to lean in and touch her shoulder, he takes it. Laria is so involved in the process that she doesn't even notice. But before he actually makes contact, she has a sudden revelation and jumps out of his reach. Thank the Lord. This girl's instincts really are top tier. At some point, her motivation wears off and she starts to fall asleep. He offers a coffee to get her energy levels back up, but somehow even that becomes romantic when he tries to wipe a piece of foam from her cheek. Laria's killer instincts kick in and she aggressively shoves him away. Not aggressively enough if you ask me. At the end of their study session, Henrique covers his charisma by asking to call her by her first name. She doesn't think anything of it, but her permission seems to make him very happy indeed, and as they walk away, she shoots him a curious look. When Laria gets to the estate, the Duke has also returned from his expedition. Already, Purnell and Nocturn are arguing in his study. Something about the Emperor encroaching on their mining territory? The reason the mines are so valuable is because they contain magic stones, a rare material needed to craft magic tools. The Blackwell miners recently found a quarry that's full of them on the border with the Holy Kingdom. That's where the Duke went to investigate. The entrance was so narrow that only children would be able to pass through, so of course, he delayed further work until they could open it up. But when the Emperor heard about this, he suggested they hired poor children from the slums to act as miners, which is just horrific. But since it's a lucrative opportunity, he used his power to transfer the mining rights to the royal family and implement his own strategy. No one dared to speak up against the Emperor, and since it's a mine on the border with a neighboring country, everyone was eager to take advantage of the resources as soon as possible. When Laria hears that they want to get children involved, she bursts into the study, furious. The Duke completely agrees with her position. He also wants his own workers in there since they'll do a much better job than children anyway. The problem is just convincing the other nobles. They haven't thought of a solution by the next day either, so Laria returns for another study session with Henrique. He offers her an egg tart, which somehow triggers an idea about the mine. Before she can explain it, he hands her a document matching the content from her hysteria research. Finally, they found a translation. As it turns out, the document Petro found was a request to borrow a book from the library of the Holy Kingdom titled Research on Hysteria and Divine Power. It seems like an important hint. I mean, if it's written in the language of the Holy Kingdom and clearly has something to do with religion, then maybe she needs to go abroad for answers. Lauria thanks Henrique for his assistance and asks if she can also call him by his first name. The poor girl clearly thinks they're becoming good friends and has no idea about his true intentions. But he just smiles and tells her there's no need for formality between friends. When she brings the translation to Petro, he is shocked. She finished the job much faster than his own researchers. She mentions visiting the Holy Kingdom, and Petro warns her against it. It's a closed country and is famous for being very wary about sharing information with outsiders. Laria is already aware of this. That's why she has another request to ask of the guild. She voices it to Petro's assistant, whose face turns pale. Whatever could it be? Meanwhile, Nocturn is still drawing a blank regarding the mining issue. He has to think of a faster way to start production that doesn't involve child labor. Otherwise, they'll lose this land to the Emperor's faction. So he's pretty stressed out. And here to make everything 10 times worse is his butler, who announces that Lady Laria has returned to the estate with a man. He doesn't need to guess who it is, because the guild assistant, Mr. Kane, storms into the Duke's office without warning and comes face to face with the Grand Duke himself. Lauria arrives next and introduces Kane to her fiancé. He has a tendency to ramble on, but he might actually be useful, since he spent many years working in a mine himself and is very familiar with the process of extracting magic stones. As soon as he sees the documents detailing the newly discovered magic quarry, he announces that the mine will collapse if excavated. The structure of the cave system is very dangerous, especially with a mine this big. The risk of collapse will only increase the more they take from it, which could result in all the workers being crushed to death. Yikes! Plus, magic stones are very fragile, so the chance of destroying the goods is also very high. It's a lose-lose situation. Of course, there is a way to harvest the magic stones without fatality, by digging from the outside in. The Duke and his fiancée are pleasantly surprised that Kane actually knows what he's talking about. They're also relieved that they found a solution and won't be forced to use child labor. Delighted to have solved the issue, Laria returns to Henrique to thank him with a feast. She mentions that she and her fiancé were having some trouble that has now resolved itself. Of course, the only word Henrique hears is fiancé and asks right away if she's officially married yet. The answer to his delight is no, so he leans across the table and asks her if there's still a chance he could win her affection. Okay, here we go, Laria. Time to put your game face on and reject this creep once and for all. Laria snatches her hand away from him and tells him to stop. Even if she's not married yet, she would never betray Nocturn's trust by getting involved with someone else. Henrique apparently finds this amusing, since many of the aristocracy don't respect their marriage vows and engage in secret affairs. As he's trying to convince her, all the pieces fall into place. She realizes that their coincidental meetings haven't been coincidence at all. She even knows his real name, Heinrich, and suspects that someone has ordered him to approach her. Because this man is actually the other male lead from the novel, Heinrich. And in the novel, he is ordered to seduce the female lead by the Emperor Gunther. He's even using the dialogue she wrote. So this whole time, he was trying to get close so that he could break up Laria and Nocturn. So sneaky. But surprisingly, Heinrich seems to have fallen for her along the way. He's just confessing his true feelings when Nocturn shows up in the most daring shirt we've seen so far. Pay attention, ladies. We've got plot points to cover. Nocturn reveals that not only is Heinrich a little silver-haired snake, but he's also the fourth prince, the Emperor's younger brother. You see, the late Emperor had 5 sons. The fourth prince, Heinrich, was the most favored as he was generous and intelligent. But when the Emperor suddenly passed away without choosing a successor, the nobles chose his eldest son Gunther to replace him. The rest of the brothers, aka his competition, all died rather mysterious deaths. One was killed in an accident, another was assassinated, and one was poisoned right in the middle of the palace. The only survivor was the fourth prince Heinrich, who now lives in fear of his elder brother, the Emperor, and has no choice but to obey his every order. Now that all the cards are on the table, Nocturne demands that he admit the truth. Heinrich agrees and tells them everything. The Emperor has used this tactic more than once. Whenever he found a political opponent, he would discredit them by having Heinrich approach their fiancée or daughter and seduce them. That's so messed up! He clearly feels guilty about his behavior, even if it was because his life was on the line. The one thing he can do is reassure the Duke that his fiancée never wavered. She had full faith in their relationship throughout his mission. But Nocturn isn't bothered by that. The fact of the matter is that Heinrich tried to steal his lover and ruin his family's reputation. In an ordinary world, he would probably be punished severely for his crimes. But in this world of Laria's own invention, she literally wrote these characters and designed their plots herself. So instead of blaming him, she asks Heinrich what he desires. She wants to help him escape the clutches of the Emperor, but that can only happen if he himself wants to escape. The fourth prince answers that yes, he has always wanted to have a life of his own, but fears the consequences of trying to escape. That's where Lauria comes in. She promises to get him out of the palace so long as he can trust her. That evening, Heinrich is perched on the end of his bed, clutching a bottle of what looks like poison. He seems hesitant, but despite his fears, he drinks it. A bolt of lightning strikes the ground, and in the same moment, the prince falls to the floor, unconscious. Several hours later, the nobles have gathered for the conclusion of the mining dispute. The general consensus is that the Duke has no leg to stand on. The Emperor will clearly win this fight. He seems to think so too, judging by the cocky smile he walks in with. When the meeting starts, the nobles voice their support of the Emperor's plan, claiming that mining work should start as soon as possible, and that hiring kids is a great idea. It's the Emperor himself who offers to hear the Duke's alternative, probably hoping to embarrass him. But Nocturn isn't one to come to a meeting unprepared. He makes the nobles consider the possibility that the mine could collapse, which would mean the death of many impoverished children and also a total loss of profit from the fragile magic stones. As he speaks, Purnell hands out documents detailing the risks and offering an alternative through Blackwell's own skilled labor force. The first protest is that the poor should be given jobs, but even the nobles are beginning to see that pushing children into mines is maybe not the best idea. Took them long enough. Not only does Blackwell's plan seem safer, but they've also started research on tools with maximum efficiency, so even if it takes a long time, they can get the best of what the mine has to offer. The Emperor just about keeps his cool, though his fists are trembling as he congratulates the Duke on his thorough research. However, he does have one concern about leaving this project in the hands of the Duke. Suddenly, he scatters a bunch of photos throughout the room depicting Lady Laria alongside a strange man on several different occasions. So he's pulling that card now, is he? The Emperor is doing his best to undermine the reputation of the Blackwell family so that no one will trust them with a project of this scale. But Nocturn just laughs. It's a proper comic book villain laugh, too. He summons a witness to defend the honor of his wife-to-be, and in walks Laria, looking radiant in a sky blue gown. She announces to the entire room full of nobles that the lady in the picture isn't her. Wait, what? How is that possible? She slams the picture in front of him and reveals that the woman in the photographs is actually Laria's maid, Mary. As soon as Heinrich confessed the truth of the Emperor's plan, they decided to come up with fake evidence. They dressed Mary up in a wig, had her walk around with the prince, and conveniently stopped in front of a photographer who offered them free pictures. Of course, they knew he was actually a paparazzi hired by the Emperor. That just worked even more in her favor. So not only can they prove the rumors of infidelity are baseless, but they also have proof that the Emperor was deliberately trying to frame them. Gunther is now sweating, but he still has one last card to play. Or so he thinks. Just then, a messenger rushes in, announcing the death of Heinrich, his only witness. The Emperor is stunned. He's been completely fooled, and now his brother is dead. Although, I don't think he cares about that so much as the fact that he's lost his secret weapon. Admitting defeat, the Emperor sits back down, acting all innocent as if he's not the reason for this whole mess in the first place. Satisfied with their victory, the Duke ignores what was clearly an attempt to defame his wife. He settles for winning the mine and using his own labor force. When the meeting finishes, Lauria is eager to show how things turned out. Although it went on longer than expected, they got everything they wanted. All the rights related to the magic quarry have been transferred to the Duke. They start work tomorrow. But before they can celebrate, there's one last thing they have to do. After riding through the woods, they arrive at a small cabin in the wilderness where Heinrich is laying on the floor unconscious. Laria freaks out and starts looking for a pulse, but there's no sign of life, not even a heartbeat. At first, she thinks Nocturn must have killed him. After all, that's what happens in the novel. But would the Nocturn we know and love really murder someone who helped them? No, he wouldn't. To Laria's shock, Heinrich stirs on the floor, waking up as if from a coma. When he notices that she's crying, he sits bolt upright. Of course she's upset. She thought he was dead. Relieved and a little overwhelmed, Lauria gives him a tight hug before her fear turns to anger. As you might have guessed, this was their plan all along. The prince was always being followed by a guard, and the day of his escape, there were even more than usual. They had originally intended to set his mansion on fire, allowing Heinrich to escape without a trace. But the emperor wouldn't be deceived so easily. Just to be extra cautious, the duke gave Heinrich a potion that sent him into a severe coma and made him look like a corpse. Of course, it was dangerous. There are side effects which can be lethal if something goes wrong. Luckily, everything worked out. But while they were creating the fake evidence, Nocturne started to have some dark thoughts. Like, did Laria really feel nothing for Heinrich, even though they spent so much time together? I mean, she clearly cares about him, and she keeps talking about leaving someday. It's only natural that he'd be worried, but this is not the same uncontrollable Duke from the book. He's more than his emotions, and besides, he has faith in Laria not to cheat, even if he's still not totally sure she'll stay. Even so, he still asked Heinrich what he thought of Laria when they had a moment alone. The prince was completely caught off guard, even though he's been very open about his feelings for her. Somehow, he finds the courage to be honest and tells the Duke straight to his face that they've grown very close, that she's a lovable friend. Nocturne loses his temper and grabs Heinrich by his collar, accusing him of lying. If Laria really meant so much to him, then he should have left her straight away, instead of leading her toward the Emperor's trap the way he did. What would have happened if she hadn't figured out the truth? Would Laria and the Duke now be the shame of society? Heinrich is shaking, but he can still admit his faults. But whatever happened in the past, he truly cares for her now. Just the idea of being apart from her makes him miserable. For so long, he has been forced to repress his emotions just to survive. And then he met Laria, who gave him a reason to keep going. So he was greedy and chose to stay by her side rather than do the right thing. It's quite the romantic speech, but it can't get through to Nocturne, who calls him selfish and says he didn't deserve their help. But once again, he puts aside his anger and offers Heinrich temporary shelter away from the Emperor's spies. Lauria is oblivious, as usual, to the fight that nearly happened between the men and gives Heinrich a fond farewell, irritating her fiancé. But no one is angrier than the Emperor, who is currently in his study trying to figure out where he went wrong. Nocturne is his ultimate rival, so it's extra insulting to have been humiliated by him in front of all those other nobles. Honestly, he should just be grateful they didn't start pointing fingers at the spy he ordered to follow them around. But Gunther isn't the type to retreat. If anything, this will make him even more determined to take down the Blackwell clan. As always, Laria isn't even a little bit worried about his revenge. As the seasons start to turn, she enjoys teaching the kids how to make bookmarks out of fallen leaves. While running to look for more, Janet bumps into her father, who tells them he has business in the city tomorrow. He asks Laria to accompany him so they can go shopping together. Although, the request is a little less romantic than Purnell, who staged this whole affair, was hoping for. Fortunately, Mary is holding the fort on the other end, turning an average invitation into a romantic getaway. But neither of the lovebirds are getting the hint. Laria doesn't make any effort to dress up, and Nocturne acts cold and distant from the moment they meet. At this rate, their staff deserve a medal for working so hard on such hopeless cases. They've only just left the house when Laria decides to turn this outing into an excuse to buy books for the children, because apparently, they're all she thinks about. In fact, it seems like she only agreed to come out on this date so that she can run errands for the kids. Oh, Laria. After rushing about, buying this and that, she notices that the Duke looks a little disappointed. She asks if there is anywhere he wanted to go, and the Duke clenches his fists and admits he wanted this to be a date. Finally, at least someone's being honest. Laria is mortified. At last, she notices how well he's dressed and remembers how Mary encouraged her to make an effort with her appearance this morning. The Duke assures her there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Since they're engaged, it's perfectly acceptable to go out on a date like this. But Laria takes that to mean he wants to keep up the act in front of the general public. She suggests they go to the theater together, but somehow even that becomes an activity for the kids. It's a play based on their favorite fairy tale, so she bought tickets hoping that they could tell Janet and Mikhail all about it when they get home. Wow. Seriously? Even aside from the romance problem, I think Laria needs to get a life. It's not all about the children. Nocturne decides to just go along with it. Outside the theater, they come across a man yelling at a kid who is employed to sell tickets. He made a mistake with his sale, so the man withholds his pay and orders him to work an extra week. He's about to slap the boy when Laria, savior of all small people, steps in between them. She offers to fix the mistake herself and pays off his debt. The Duke holds the boy's hand and assures him that the Blackwell family can protect him anytime. Did someone say husband material? After that incident, they head inside the theater. For Nocturn, the play is pretty boring, up until a dramatic scene where one brother betrays the other. The Duke is deeply affected by it. With all the memories it's triggering, he starts to enter the first stages of hysteria. Laria notices immediately that something is wrong. Nervous, she grabs his hand, and the shock actually manages to snap Nocturn out of the attack. They step outside for a breath of fresh air, sitting on the steps to let him calm down. His fiancée knows very well what triggered him and feels responsible for taking him to a play that nearly made him hysterical. The Duke apologizes for making them miss the end of the performance, but luckily, the kid they saved earlier can tell them the rest of the story. He explains that the story isn't actually about betrayal, but about brothers who become heroes by working together to defeat the evil dragon. Looking at it that way, it's not so upsetting for Nocturne. By the time they're walking home, he's recovered enough to take her hand. It's like medicine for him having Laria by his side. For her, it's like a shot of adrenaline, so she asks him to let go. Cupid must have shot an arrow because just then, she trips, forcing the Duke to pull her against him until she regains her balance. Both of them are bright red and nervous. But with the sun setting in the distance, it's the perfect moment to finally take their relationship to the next level. Summoning all his courage, Nocturne closes the distance between them. His lips are only inches from hers when suddenly, Laria panics and pulls away. Oh, come on! Girl, what is your problem? If it were me, I would have kissed that man 1,000 times already! Awkwardly, she thanks him for breaking her fall and shoves him a respectable distance away. Oh, poor Nocturne. He was so nervous just for her to turn him down. At least now she knows how he feels about her. Took her long enough. That night, Laria barely gets a wink of sleep. The events of the theater replay in her mind, along with the memory of Nocturne asking her out in the carriage. Heat creeps up to her cheeks, and her heart begins to thump uncontrollably. For the first time, she dares to entertain a thought she's long ignored. Could it be that she's come to have feelings for Nocturne? And more importantly, is it all right for her to accept his love? A hopeful feeling overcomes her, but it quickly dissipates when she remembers that the female lead of the novel has yet to appear. It wouldn't hurt to take her place, you know? The following day, Lauria heads to the market when all of a sudden a boy on a building's roof cries for help. He's slipping. How the heck did he even get there? Lauria doesn't think twice. She runs to the boy's aid and readies herself to catch him. Girl, no offense, but you look like you'd break on impact. It's a good thing she came running when she did, because a few seconds later, the boy slips completely and Laria manages to catch him. Or at least, most of him. The boy still sustains leg injuries, but that's way better than going splat on the pavement. Laria also injures her wrist, yet she still puts the boy's needs first. She's about to carry him to a nearby clinic when someone calls out after them. A woman with golden eyes and silver hair. The woman offers to help the young boy herself. She holds out her hand and chants a spell, and in no time the boy's injuries are healed. To Laria's surprise, the woman heals her wrist too, remarking that she was in awe of her heroism. However, Laria is in shock. Healing others with just one touch? That's only possible with divine power, and there's only one person who's supposed to have such abilities. You can already guess who this woman is. She's Irene Kendrisa, the original female lead. In the novel, Irene was a child chosen by God. The sacred kingdom kept her hidden her whole life, raising her in seclusion at the temple, away from the outside world. Over time, Irene grew more curious, and so she ventured out on a solo journey to the Empire before officially receiving her saint title. Laria never expected to encounter her so early on at present. After all, Irene was set to appear and meet Nocturne next spring. And cliché as it might sound, the two supposedly fall in love with each other at first sight. Just thinking about Irene and Nocturne's fated romance makes her gut twist. When the two finish acquainting themselves, Irene asks Laria to show her around the Empire. Asking a stranger definitely isn't the wisest decision, but after witnessing how brave and selfless Laria was, Irene couldn't trust anyone more. Unfortunately, Laria declines, much to Irene's sadness. However, she does offer to show Irene around the market, or at least that's what she initially planned. She wound up showing Irene around town in the end. By sunset, Laria can barely keep up with Irene's energy, but Laria can hardly blame her for feeling excited about strolling around town. She lived her whole life in the temple after all. Funnily enough, Irene's reasons for venturing into the Empire almost makes Laria choke. Turns out it's because she was influenced by a romance novel. Though she's only here to explore for now, Laria figures that chasing love will come next. A lump begins to form in Laria's throat. She knows that Irene is supposed to be with Nocturn. It breaks her to let him go, but she figures that it's for the best. So she does the unthinkable. She invites Irene to the estate, stating there's someone she wants to introduce to her. I would have shipped the female lead off to the next kingdom if it meant keeping my man. 2 days later, Lauria introduces Irene to the children, but they get off to a bad start when Irene makes fun of Jeanette's mispronunciations. Jeanette is visibly embarrassed and offended. Despite being apologized to, she still expresses disdain for Irene. Honestly, Lauria thought Irene would get along well with the kids. After all, the day before, she introduced her to Nocturn and they seemed to be getting along just fine. Too fine, if you ask me. Lauria introduces Irene as an old friend who has come to visit her. Nocturn, in response, welcomes Irene eagerly, an act that puzzles Lauria. Since when was he so kind to strangers? The way they click instantly, Lauria takes it upon herself to play matchmaker. She convinces Nocturn to tell Irene all about the Empire's history. Irene is instantly on board with the idea, but Nocturn looks reluctant. Still, if it's what Lauria wants, then he'll just go along with it. Happy wife, happy life, right? Snapping herself back to the present, Lauria becomes troubled. She really wanted Irene and the kids to get along. After all, it would be reassuring to leave knowing that they'd love Irene and vice versa. Just then, Nocturn arrives, curious about the ongoing fuss. Jeanette continues to stand her ground, telling Lauria that she doesn't want Irene around. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone, she suggests for Nocturn to entertain Irene. After all, he hasn't finished telling her all about the Empire's history. Honestly, it's the perfect plan. She'll get Irene away from the children while still pushing her towards Nocturn. Drop the act, girl. We know you're hurting. Once again, Nocturn obliges. Over the next few days, Nocturne and Irene spend more and more time together. Their romance is inevitable, but the only way it'll flourish is if Lauria leaves the picture. That afternoon, she meets with Nocturne, but leaving isn't so easy when he closes the gap between them first. Tilting her head to meet his gaze, he wonders why Lauria can't even look him in the eye. Lauria laughs nervously, coming up with an excuse that it's probably just because they haven't seen each other in a while. For a second, Nocturne looks relieved. He really thought Lauria was avoiding him these past few days. He confesses that he might have just been oversensitive, hence why he was jumping to conclusions. Hearing him voice out his thoughts like that, Lauria can't help but look at him with awe. He's always been the sweetest, and it's for that same reason she has to leave. Deep down, she knows that he'll only ever love her, which won't be fair to the female lead, Irene. Taking a deep breath, she asks him for a request. It may be odd, but she wants a hug, something that Nocturne gives her so easily. He practically wraps his arms around her the second she says it. Under the warmth of his hold, Lauria takes in the moment, breathing his scent, leaning into his hug, and allowing herself to accept his love even for a moment. In that very moment, she makes up her mind to prioritize his happiness, even if it means sacrificing her own. In subtle tears, she thanks Nocturne for everything as she slowly breaks away. Days later, Irene greets Lauria in the hallway. She expresses how much she wants to chat with her more, but Lauria quickly cuts their conversation short, much to Irene's dismay. What Lauria doesn't know, though, is that Irene hates having to spend time with Nocturne, and the same goes for Nocturne. They're only putting up with each other for Lauria. Wait, so let me get this straight. She doesn't like him romantically? I mean, she does seem more fond of Lauria. In Nocturne's office, he and Irene bicker nonstop when suddenly the children come running in, their eyes streaming with tears. They inform him that Lauria's gone missing and that she only left him a letter saying goodbye. Nocturne immediately bolts to Lauria's room, and just as the children said, he finds a letter, one that leaves him grim-faced. Inside, Lauria returns the deposit he gave her and writes about not being able to complete their contract due to unavoidable circumstances. Seeing her letter, Nocturne knows that this is the end. If he doesn't chase after her, he'll lose her forever. Elsewhere, Lauria wanders the streets of the Empire, lugging her suitcase with her. She thinks of Nocturne and the children, how happy and loving they are now compared to when she first arrived. It really hurts her to leave everyone, but for their sake, she must. As she walks further, the familiar streets give her more heartache. These are the same streets they all made memories together. Pushing through her sadness, she genuinely wishes everyone happiness, especially Nocturn. But as if adding salt to the wound, her heart shatters more when she reaches the bridge, the same bridge that she and Nocturn once shared a romantic moment at. She takes a moment to compose herself again. Leaving Nocturn wasn't just for his sake, but also for hers. After all, he's destined to be with Irene, so shouldn't she also dream of finding a destined love like theirs? For a moment, she lets herself succumb to the pain as she cries it out. Unexpectedly, she sees someone running into view. It's Nocturn, sweaty, panting, and breathless. Instantly, he pulls Lauria close, his voice shaking as he asks her for an explanation. Whatever her problems are, he promises to solve it for her. Words that only worsen Lauria's crying fit. Nervously, he asks if she's leaving because of him. Was it his actions? The hysteria? Or is it because she really just can't stand him? Lauria stops him in his tracks. Bigger tears fall down her face as she breaks down completely. It's not that she hated him, but rather the opposite. She's completely in love with him too. Laria, you leaving would probably start Nocturne's villain arc. Her train of thought is interrupted, though, when Nocturne crashes his lips into hers, pulling her in for a deep and passionate kiss. Finally, took you guys long enough. The next morning, Lauria wakes up in her room. Yesterday's events come flooding through her mind, making her blush and flustered all over again. But now that she's confessed her feelings to Nocturne, she can only worry about Irene. How will she even tell Irene about their relationship? Before she can find an answer, Irene barges into her room, her face laden with concern. Turns out she was worried about Lauria, and she thought she ran away because Nocturne has been treating her badly. The statement makes Lauria pause, entirely dumbfounded. Irene then explains. Turns out from the very first moment Lauria left those two alone, Irene and Nocturne have already been at odds with each other. What Lauria thought would become the start of the two's inevitable budding romance was actually just them competing on who Lauria is more fond of. LOL, now this is real comedy. Luckily, despite their differences, Irene still puts in a good word for Nocturne. At first, Irene thought her coming to the Empire would lead her to her one true love. Someone courageous, brave, and loved by everyone. Who would have thought she'd find all those qualities in Lauria? Does Irene just admire her, or does she like her? Now this is interesting. Later that day, Lauria informs Nocturne that Irene will be leaving in a few days. And my, this man just cannot keep his facial reactions to himself. If he could ship Irene off himself, I bet he would. Of course, there's also the matter of Irene revealing that she's a saint. But Lauria leaves it out. She did say she'd keep it a secret. Their conversation then shifts to the kids. If they marry, they'd soon become Lauria's own kids too. A situation that Lauria wants more than anything. Without thinking twice, Nocturne then gets down on one knee, professing all his love for Lauria and stealing another kiss. Just when everything seems perfect, Irene plots something in the dead of night. I knew there was something fishy about her. Time passes and soon Nocturne and Lauria's romance develops. One day, by Lady Sherwood's invitation, they join Lauria's siblings in volunteering at the orphanage, adding more warmth and fun to the entire experience. Well, fun for everyone else, but hell for Nocturne. He was supposed to wring water from a blanket, but ended up ripping the cloth instead. Luckily, Lauria teaches him the basics of doing laundry. Unbeknownst to them, they're actually being admired from afar by Lady Sherwood and the director of the orphanage. The director has nothing but good things to say about Lauria. She's smart, hardworking, and the one who got her family into volunteer service too. Truthfully, the first time the Sherwoods came to volunteer, the director was very wary of them. But now she can't imagine the place without them. They really made the orphanage brighter and the children happier. And Lady Sherwood feels the same. Cutting back to Lauria, Lady Sherwood can't help but notice that her stepdaughter is a natural at caring for children. This makes her wonder if it's because of the Blackwell kids. Lauria chuckles nervously and simply agrees. Yup, that's exactly the reason why. It's not like she was some kindergarten teacher in the modern world or something, right? Phew! All that aside, Lady Sherwood takes the time to thank Lauria for the opportunity to turn their lives around. Smiling, Lauria thanks her too. After all, they did prove themselves worthy of her forgiveness. I wonder if Count Sherwood will ever have a redemption arc. He's a tough nut to crack. By sunset, Nocturne joins Lauria to rest on a bench. Her bright smile and shining essence is truly magical. and that's saying something considering he has the Blackwell ability. Out of pure curiosity, he then asks Lauria the million-dollar question, wondering if she's a special being. He continues to explain, the way Lauria knows things, acts like an expert despite having no experience, and even sets off magical devices, nothing is ordinary about her at all. Lauria stares at him mortified. Silence stretches between the lovers, and soon Nocturn notices Lauria's unease. He apologizes for springing something like that so suddenly to her. He never meant to make her uncomfortable, he was simply curious. After all, Lauria just entered his life out of nowhere, and suddenly good things started happening to him. One might think he's been blessed by the gods. His expression then softens to that of understanding. Whatever it is that Lauria is keeping, he'll wait until she's ready to tell him. It's a long story for sure, but there's no rush. She can take as long as she can until she wants to open up. Guilt gnaws at Lauria's heart. God knows she wants to tell him about everything, but she just can't. If he finds out that she's the author of this world, that she's responsible for all his suffering, he might just end up hating her. And that's something Lauria will never be ready for. Aw, I feel so sad for her. It's not easy carrying that much anxiety in you. I just hope one day she learns to trust Nocturne enough. That night at the Imperial Palace, Emperor Gunther is enraged as he talks with someone over his crystal ball. Apparently, the person on the other line refuses to give him a refund for his down payment on the child slaves. He has no use for them now that the mining project fell into Nocturne's hands. That aside, the person reminds the Emperor of their deal. All he has to do is remove the obstacles in front of him and everything will fall back into place. This deal must be so heinous and secret to the point that they switched to a different language. Now I'm intrigued. Also, why do I have a feeling that the obstacles in question are Nocturne and Lauria? The following morning, Lauria comes into Nocturne's office. She has a confession to make. But hold your horses, it's not the confession that we think. She's just come to admit that the breakfast he detested earlier that morning was actually made by her. He quickly tries to make up for his insults, remarking that the dish was unique. Sure, whatever you say, babe. Honestly, he wasn't expecting that kind of confession. He was probably hoping it was related to their conversation the day before, but he doesn't voice it out to Lauria. Instead, he pulls her close and closes the distance between them with a kiss. Lauria is taken aback, but it doesn't take her long to adapt, moving in closer and kissing him back. Just when things seem to be getting steamy, the cock-blockers arrive. Jeanette and Mikhail storms into the room. They demand to know if the rumors are true that Nocturne is going away on a long business trip for the winter. The room falls silent, and that's all the answer they need to confirm it. Nocturne flinches at his mistake. He truly meant to bring this up to them sooner. Guess the children beat you to it, huh? He turns to Lauria and apologizes for not having said anything sooner. Shortly after, he sends the kids back to their room and explains the situation to Lauria. You see, the fourth prince, Henrik, whom they helped escape from Gunther's control, might not be safe for long. He fled to the Holy Land after staging his death, but now rumors have been going around that he's been spotted alive. To make sure he's safe, Nocturne plans to investigate the situation personally. Hearing this, Lauria is tempted to come along, but she can't let Nocturne know that she's investigating his hysteria, so she opts to stay home with the kids. The two exchange a knowing smile. Before parting, Nocturne presents Lauria with a gift, an enchanted necklace that will protect her while he's gone. Soon, the day of Nocturne's departure arrives and everyone comes to see him off. As he leaves, they can only bid each other well, hoping they'd take care of themselves while away from each other. With Nocturne gone, Simon invites Lauria back in, but she refuses and redirects Simon to the stables instead. Turns out, she's transformed it into a winter-proof stable. And that's not all either. She also started a program of providing the staff with extra warm winter necessities. It's the least she can do to repay everyone's hard work, after all. She's a great Duchess in the making indeed. A while later, Lauria retreats to her room, finally entertaining the thoughts she's been dreading to face. When exactly will she tell Nocturne the truth about her identity? How silly of her to think he wouldn't catch on when she was the one who wrote him with special abilities in her novel. Who knows, maybe he sensed something off about her from the start. Still, it's hard for her to come to terms with all this. She just doesn't want to risk losing his affection when he finds out that she's the author who gave him so much suffering. Snapping herself out of those grim thoughts, Lauria becomes determined to find a cure for Nocturne's hysteria. Only then, when she successfully healed him, will she confess the entire truth to him. Wait, why is she keeping the necklace back in its box? Put it back on, girl! Who knows what dangers you'll face? You're stressing me out here! That afternoon, Laria meets with Irene, hoping to talk about rare books in the Holy Kingdom's library. Specifically books that could tell her if divine power can cure mental illnesses. Irene doesn't know the context of her questions, but she gives her a flat and blunt answer. Divine power can do nothing for the mentally troubled. For Laria's sake, Irene pledges to study more and look into the matter, even if it does seem impossible. Dejected, Laria heads back to her room after meeting with Irene. Just then, a letter arrives, one that sends a chill down her spine. The contents of the letter are chilling. Someone writes about knowing her identity as a special being involved with the creation of the world and worse? They know about Nocturn's hysteria, aka his madness. Now, unless she wants all this information to be leaked to the public, the sender suggests she head to the Imperial Castle right away. Laria swallows down an anxious gulp. It's obvious that Gunther sent her the letter. Gaining the Emperor as your enemy has got to be the worst luck of all. Still, she refuses to take his bait. Until she can find a way to cure Nocturne's madness, she'll just have to avoid the Emperor for as long as she can. Ugh, that doesn't seem as easy as it sounds. As if fate were on her side, she receives good news a few days later. Petro sends her a letter explaining that he's found a lead about madness in general. Turns out, the Holy Kingdom has been studying about madness for a long time. He also managed to gather some documents for Laria to interpret. Seeing that Petro's taking care of everything, Laria makes haste to visit the guild. She grabs a cloak and puts on a magical necklace Nocturne gave her. But just as she heads out, Mary stops her. She isn't letting Laria sneak out. Not alone, at least. Getting dressed, Mary volunteers to chaperone her, and there isn't much Laria can do about it. Together, the two venture downtown, stopping right in front of the Information Guild. By Laria's insistence, Mary stands guard and waits outside while Laria heads in alone. But that soon proves to be a big mistake. Inside, Petro and his men are all held captive, their lives threatened by the enemy. The door slams shut instantly, and the gravity of the situation finally dawns on Laria. She's fallen right into Gunther's trap. She remembers her necklace's special ability, but before she can yank it and call for help, they manage to knock her out cold. Hours later, her eyes flutter open, and the situation is just as she feared. Before her, Gunther sports an upturned smile, still as cocky as ever. Had she just heeded his words in his first letter, things wouldn't have come to this. He dangles the topic of Nocturne's madness like bait on a fishing line for Laria, certain that she would do anything to learn more about it. But she knows better than to believe that this is the only reason why he's taken her. Gunther smirks, his eyes confirming her suspicions. He does, indeed, have other motives. Apparently, Gunther has a friend from the Holy Kingdom who wants to confirm if Laria truly is a special being. And the only way to do that is to make Laria chug down the questionable drink in his hands. Why am I getting a bad feeling that it's Irene? Hopefully not, though. When Laria refuses, Gunther switches tactics. To her horror, he brings in his hostage, Mary. Forcibly, he pours the drink down Mary's throat, and in seconds, she feels her stomach churn in excruciating pain. It's so painful that she loses consciousness shortly. The drink in question is called the essence of evil. Everyone has an equal balance of evil and holy attributes within them, and no amount of religious deeds or evil doings can tip the inherent spiritual scale. However, the essence of evil, a drink concentrated with pure evil energy, can break the balance of energies within the body. A person who has ingested the essence would soon become corrupted by evil until they ultimately die a slow and painful death. Gunther then explains that there is a way to save Mary. Drinking the essence of holy energy would reverse the effects of the essence of evil. But of course, he isn't going to give it to some maid unless Laria agrees to do his bidding. What a jackass! Left with no choice, Laria yields and asks him to hand over the cup, much to Gunther's delight. Days later, Laria still finds herself by Mary's bedside. Her condition hasn't improved at all. That day, when Laria drank the essence of evil, she felt nothing out of the ordinary, proof that she truly is the special being that Gunther claimed she was. Ever since then, she and Mary had been confined to the palace against their will, and Mary has been getting worse with every passing day. The only good thing about Gunther is that he seems to be keeping his word about providing the essence of holy energy for Mary's healing. Deep in thought, Laria wonders how much Gunther knows about her identity. Could it have been the Holy Kingdom who told him all about her? Then again, how did they even know in the first place? Still, she can't afford to succumb to desperation now. She's already in the palace, so she might as well just find out what Gunther wants. Later, she heads to Gunther's office to get medicine for Mary. But while she's there, Gunther plants seeds of doubt in her mind, expressing that Nocturn might not want her after certain rumors spread. After all, with how obedient she's been these past few days, one could easily think she has submitted to the Emperor completely, and perhaps even lost her chastity to him. What a disgusting excuse of a man! The notion of tarnishing her reputation like that infuriates Lauria to the core, but she can't show an ounce of weakness. Confident, she retorts that Nocturn isn't one to believe such baseless rumors. His main concern will always be her safety. Safety, however, isn't something Lauria can't guarantee for Gunther when Nocturn comes to find her. But the threat means nothing to him as he narrates how unfortunate it would be if Nocturn had a little accident along the road. Is he hinting at a possible ambush? At this point, Lauria is beyond terrified for Nocturn's welfare. Later, when she goes back into the room, a blissful sight awaits her. Mary has finally woken up! Over the next few days, Gunther stations his knights to keep an eye on the prisoners 24/7. And the kicker? He orders his staff not to let them out of the room at all costs. Being stuck in a room for days on end has been suffocating Lauria slowly. She needs to come up with a plan to escape. And fast! Every time the knights change shifts and during meal deliveries, there's a small window of time when her room is left unguarded. She could easily make a run for it, but she's sure to get caught within minutes. The only way out is to call for help from the outside, and writing a letter might just do the trick. But the question is, how will she even get her hands on a pen and paper? Just then, a bright idea strikes her. As lunchtime approaches, she refuses the meal brought by a servant, stating that she can't eat it due to her buckwheat allergies. The maid immediately becomes concerned. After all, the Emperor is sure to lop off her head if anything happens to Laria under her watch. Feigning understanding, Lauria then asks for some pen and paper, offering to write down all her allergies. Thankfully, the maid doesn't seem to find it suspicious at all. Soon, a bottle of ink and some paper is delivered to Lauria's room, and she immediately gets to work. Hurriedly, she pens a letter to Simon detailing the reality of her situation, that she's being held in the palace against her will. When the maid dozes off for a while, she then risks everything and sprints. She runs for life, hoping to encounter other nobles and beg them for help. But the knights notice her absence and immediately give chase. Lauria's nerves are on fire at this point, but just when all hope seems lost, someone pulls her into a room. It's the Empress, and she's willing to help Lauria. Thank God this woman is sensible! How did she even end up marrying that awful Emperor? Apparently, the Empress only found out about Lauria's situation through her son Cedric. Whoops, don't think he's a little angel just yet. He was telling his mother about the wench of Blackwell who finally got the imprisonment she deserved. Continuing, Cedric expressed how the Blackwells were nothing more than insects and traitors that need eliminating. Tears run down the Empress's cheeks as her son's words horrify her. He's been brainwashed by his father, and as a mother, it breaks the Empress's heart to see her son walk down the wrong path. If helping Lauria is what it takes to save her son from Gunther, then that's exactly what the Empress is going to do. Still, Lauria can't blame herself for being skeptical about her offer. Just then, a loud knock is heard. In that split second, Lauria makes up her mind, choosing to trust the Empress with her letter. Outside, the knights fidget as they await a response from the Empress's quarters. After a few seconds, the door bursts open, and the Empress hauls out Lauria, throwing her at their feet. Displeased, she scolds them for letting the prisoner trespass and hide in her room. If they don't do their job properly, she threatens to personally inform the Emperor of their incompetence. Gotta love her acting skills! The knights throw Lauria back into her room, threatening to hurt her if she tries to escape again. When her lips tremble, they finally think she's learned to fear them. But little do they know that her fears are only for her letter in the Empress's hands. That night, the Empress follows through with her word as she mails out Lauria's letters. By morning, news of Lauria's imprisonment in the palace circulates among the public, an event that triggers Gunther's wrath. He's now sure that there's a traitor in his midst. Enraged, he consults his crystal ball, urging his friend in the Holy Kingdom to uphold his end of their deal. Just as he confirmed Laria's identity, his friend must now eliminate Nocturn in return. The person on the other line tells Gunther that dealing with Nocturn in the Holy Kingdom is no easy feat, but Gunther couldn't care less. Devious as ever, he reminds his conspirator that he has the upper hand in their deal. After all, he's the Emperor, and he has records of their transactions. Should he waver, Gunther threatens to release everything and ruin him. Hearing this, the person on the other line finally concedes. He obliges to Gunther's request and promises to contact him again soon for updates on Nocturn's demise. Elsewhere, Nocturn finally arrives in the Holy Kingdom after weeks of traveling. He heads to Heinrich's hideout in the middle of the forest and is relieved to see him well. Turns out it was Heinrich himself who summoned him there. His location hasn't been revealed completely yet, but lately, intelligence vessels from foreign nations have been targeting him. But his safety aside, what he really wants to discuss is something else. Before Nocturn, Heinrich lays out documents and photographs, evidence against his brother Gunther. It details proof of all of Gunther's crimes. Jeez, embezzlement, endangering national security, murder? This guy is ticking off crimes like he's playing a bingo card. The documents make Nocturn's blood run cold. If Heinrich had access to such documents all along, then why didn't he ever try to overthrow his brother? Sheepishly, Heinrich replies that it was only up until he met Lauria that he decided to gather his courage. Although he doesn't have the guts to face Gunther on his own, he trusts Nocturn to deliver justice. Nocturn nods in understanding. He's about to head out when a messenger from the Empire arrives with urgent news. His fiancée, Laria, has been imprisoned in the palace. Nocturn immediately orders everyone's return. They ride swiftly and brave the harsh blizzard, but danger awaits them, and it's not the weather. Above the mountain, a group of cloaked men gather and make their move. It's an ambush. Using magic, they then trigger an avalanche that buries Nocturn and his men below. Back at the palace, Gunther relays the sad news to Lauria, informing her that Nocturn and his men were swept off by an avalanche in the Holy Kingdom. Though his body hasn't been found yet, Gunther is certain that Nocturn is gone. Laria's breath hitches in her throat, her gut twisting in ways unimaginable. Still, she can't let herself believe Gunther's words. He can't be trusted after all. Deep down, she holds out hope that he's alive. His possibility of his death isn't even something she's willing to entertain. Yet amid her vulnerability, Gunther approaches her like a viper. Tilting her head to meet his gaze, he then tells Lauria to be his concubine. This guy is the most shameless prick ever! To him, it would be such a shame to let a beautiful lady like Lauria wither away as a widow. So why not just become his concubine and devote her life to her new husband? The idea disgusts Lauria deeply. Scorned, she utters her response clearly, telling Gunther just how pathetic he is. From the start, it was clear that Gunther had envied everything Nocturne had. It's his inferiority complex showing, she quips. Her response makes Gunther's eyes widen and pause, clearly appalled by her audacity. Just then, old wounds reopen. He remembers his father beating the crap out of him for always coming in second to Nocturne. Laria's words definitely struck a nerve within Gunther. Before her, he finally shows his true colors, violent and unremorseful. Not gonna lie, if you told me it was actually Gunther who was psychotic and not Nocturne, I'd believe you. In one swift move, he grabs Lauria by her neck, lifting her up and choking her forcibly. Luckily, Lauria manages to grab her necklace, the same one Nocturne gifted her, and a bright purple light erupts from it. It's so powerful that it sends Gunther staggering. With Gunther distracted, Lauria runs for her life. But just when she rounds the corner, she bumps into one of the Emperor's staff. It's someone she knows well. Irene. With adrenaline coursing through her veins and a group of knights on her trail, Laria's thoughts are all over the place. The only rational thing she can think of is to ask Irene for help. How about asking her why she's on her way to Gunther's office with a bunch of files? Irene hesitates, but then she recalls Laria's genuine kindness, and it's enough to convince her to help Lauria. Back in his office, Gunther's mood plummets 100 times more. The crystal ball stirs, and his conspirator from the Holy Kingdom delivers devastating news. He's ending their deal. Apparently, he had been exploiting Gunther all along, knowing that he was a greedy and power-hungry man by nature. This absolutely drives Gunther to his wit's end. Enraged, he begins threatening his conspirator, reminding him that he holds evidence that would bring him to ruin. However, his conspirator only laughs, revealing that such evidence has already been stolen from under his nose. Gunther looks around, and indeed, his office has been ransacked of important documents. Only then does he realize that he's been played. All along, his men have been working for his conspirator. The man on the other line continues to laugh at Gunther's face, suggesting that he flee now while he still has the chance. He then adds that a fool like Gunther would never stand a chance against Nocturn, especially when Nocturn possesses the power of the magic eye. Utterly defeated, Gunther smashes the crystal ball in anger. Menacingly, he grabs his sword and sets off to find Lauria. Her mangled body will be the perfect gift for Nocturn. That's just twisted. Somebody put this guy in a straitjacket. Elsewhere, Heinrich ventures into the woods to meet with people he's been conspiring with. It's none other than the cloaked men who triggered the avalanche earlier. Stern as ever, he then sets their plan in motion, ordering them to open the gate. First of all, I trusted you. Second, what gate is he talking about? Back at the palace, Laria drags Irene into her room, ordering her to escape with Mary. As for her, Lauria pledges to stay behind and distract the guards. Irene looks reluctant, but Lauria insists. Her only concern for now is saving Mary, even if it means putting her own life on the line. That's a noble cause, but girl, think about your fiancé and the children. Just as they plan, Lauria runs to catch the guards' attention, and Irene escapes with Mary on her back. But what Lauria doesn't realize is that she's chosen to run in the worst direction possible, straight into Gunther's greenhouse. As she takes refuge there, Gunther comes out from behind and grabs her forcibly. He draws his sword and prepares to strike. Just then, a voice cuts through the greenhouse. It's the Empress. She begs Gunther to stop, but he only shoves her too. Just recently, it's come to his attention that one of the Empress's birds has gone missing. And what convenient timing too, because soon after, rumors of Lauria's imprisonment began to spread. Gunther laughs bitterly, expressing how he never expected his own wife to betray him. He turns his sword to the Empress, his eyes clouded with bloodlust. Once he finishes Lauria, he promises to end her next. What he doesn't realize is that the Empress is ready to throw her life away, stating that she would rather die than continue being his wife. To her, it's only fitting. That way, Gunther will finally be exposed as the tyrant that he is. Unable to stand her, Gunther shoves her again. When she stops speaking, he turns his attention to Lauria, demanding her to tell him more about Nocturn's abilities. When it becomes clear to him that Lauria knows nothing, he then tells her all about Nocturn possessing the power of the magic eye, an ability that can sense things that are out of the ordinary. Realizing that has no information for him, Gunther raises his sword again, and this time, he actually swings it at Lauria. To his and everyone's surprise, someone saves Lauria. It's Nocturn Blackwell himself. Wedging himself between Lauria and Gunther, Nocturn apologizes for being late, but his timing is the least of Lauria's concerns. Seeing him alive is more than enough for her. In tears, she can't stop herself from hugging him from behind, and Nocturn cradles her just as she's about to break down completely. Not to interrupt a sweet moment, but guys, there's literally an evil man with a sword right behind you! Breaking away from Lauria, Nocturn then turns to face his enemy. Gunther absolutely loses it at this point, but before he can strike Nocturn down, knights swarm the greenhouse. They're not there to capture Nocturn, but rather Gunther. They force him to his knees just in time for Heinrich to make his entrance. You know what? I'm going to stop questioning everything. I'll just trust the author because they're doing a great job of giving us some secret mastermind plots. Before everyone, Heinrich enumerates all of Gunther's crimes, using them as grounds to dethrone him. Being the fourth prince, he then pledges to ascend the throne, an arrangement that everyone supports. Gunther seethes with anger. Was this Nocturn's plan all along? To overthrow him? He then laughs manically, stating that Nocturn should go down with him. After all, he did kill his father and take his place as the Duke. Nocturn can only look at him with pity. Even when they were children, he had always sensed darkness within Gunther. Over the years, nothing has changed. In fact, his aura seems to have been more corrupted than ever. If Gunther thinks he can ruin Nocturn like that, he's wrong. For years, Nocturn blamed himself for his father's death too. But it was only up until he met Laria that he realized he isn't the monster his madness wanted him to become. Not once did he give in to evil. Unlike some other guy there, Gunther? The air thickens with Gunther's laughter, mocking Nocturn's every word, as if he isn't capable of love. The lunatic is fully convinced that Nocturn will always be, because he is and always will be, a monster for killing his own father. A monster who doesn't deserve love at all from anyone. Not only that, he mentions out loud Nocturn's secret ability that no one is aware of, taunting the lack of trust between the lovers, and the fact that Lauria is not who she says she is. Unwilling to let them have the satisfaction of victory, Gunther has half a mind to draw out his blade and stab himself. A grotesque final statement that shows his sheer determination that he is living in his own delusions, believing that he isn't the real monster here. Shock ripples through the room. This is really the depth of his madness. However, one thing crystallizes for Nocturn about his fiancée. Time passes after that day, and finally, a true and deserving emperor, Heinrich, ascends, determined to right the wrong. He meticulously dissects his brother's reign of crimes, punishing those who feign innocence, and getting to the bottom of whatever insane plans Gunther has been up to. Most face the consequences of their choices, except for two, the former empress and Cedric. They may be related to the madman, but they were victims. But now, they're living quietly and happily far away from the Empire. However, as much as we want a happy ending, Heinrich cannot rest easy as Gunther's treachery stretches further than what we can imagine. The Pontifex himself offers aid, sending Irene to assist the investigation, revealing that there's a traitor within the Holy Nation assisting the malicious schemes. As it also turns out, the Pontifex had also been of help to the Duke by dispatching sorcerers to teleport them to directly confront and defeat Gunther back then. All is well and swell with Mary regaining her health from Irene's powers. And is that Pernil I see staying by her side? As much as I want to claim this is the end of the story, our favorite couple has it hard. Lauria comes face to face with Nocturn, uneasy but ready to confess the truth. Nocturn doesn't believe Gunther's words about her, but... In the Duke's study, Pernil provides Gunther's documents. Very important documents that were clearly destroyed intentionally. It has information that confirms what the former Emperor's attendants have been saying. There is someone else who schemed with the lunatic, but that someone is the sole reason for deliberately entangling Laria in their plans to drive the couple apart. Although Nocturn is certain of what the accomplice wanted to do, his demon eyes say otherwise, seeing the light around Laria. He unlocks a hidden lair within his study, the Chamber of Madness, a sacred space reserved only for the Duke and Duchess. It houses generations of research into a terrifying legacy. The madness isn't a disease, but a curse told to be passed through generation to generation in various families by the devil. Only the Blackwells have survived. The materials also show that the Blackwells have the magical eye to see the truth behind one's essence, and Laria is no exception. Yet when he gazes upon her, he doesn't see a threat or some alienated being. He sees someone utterly extraordinary, and he's prepared to embrace whatever truth she carries. Right or wrong, it doesn't even matter to him. He is simply irrevocably in love with her. That's so sweet. Power of love, everybody! But love, for all its power, cannot silence the chaos in Laria's mind. Can she confess she's the architect of his misery? That she wrote his suffering into existence? The words catch in her throat like broken glass. She meets his earnest gaze, those demon eyes searching her soul, and she does what any self-respecting, terrified author would do. She lies. Laria insists she has no secrets. She's just ordinary. Completely, totally, painfully ordinary. Laria, come on, why? After everything, you choose now to be a coward? Distrust isn't what Nocturne is feeling right now upon hearing her words. In fact, he trusts her a whole lot. Maybe even more, especially now that he tells her his secret ability. Maybe he is too greedy to seek her truth. He simply reassures her that he is and will be patient enough to become someone trustworthy in her eyes someday. This man is a manifestation of every green flag out there. However, as soon as Lauria leaves the study, she sobs to herself. She's only concealing the truth because she is equally in love with him. Because if she does tell him, it might hurt him or change his view of her. Soon, days pass by, and it seemed like it was just yesterday that the couple couldn't get enough of each other. But that doesn't seem to be the case recently. Everyone in the manor has taken notice of the distance and can only wish for their happiness. Their estranged relationship is ever so present during Heinrich's crowning ceremony that Irene spots it from afar. Determined to help her BFF while the new emperor and duke are away, Irene approaches Laria with an earnest look. She offers to accompany the soon-to-be Duchess to the castle fountain to pray to the goddess. And who knows, maybe the goddess will be so kind as to grant Laria's wish? At the fountain, Irene chants some kind of prayer intended for the goddess. Somehow, it does cheer Laria up a little as she follows Irene's actions. With just the touch of her hand on the fountain water and a single wish, an unexpected thing happens. She falls into the water. Nocturn quickly dives to the fountain to save her, but as soon as they step out, Laria is no longer breathing. Oh no, that can't be good! How deep was this fountain anyway? Heinrich rushes to find the royal doctor to save Laria, leaving the two alone to inspect Laria's body. Seeing her critical state, Irene offers to heal Laria as she reveals herself as the saintess to Nocturn. With no time to waste, divine magic power lights up the whole room, even surprising the Emperor and the royal doctor. Laria is breathing again. Yes, but this is not the ideal outcome. Only her pulse is back to normal, but she is not waking up. From that day on, Nocturn has been right by Laria's side, checking up on her day and night. Despite Irene having the power to heal basically anything, the only probable reason for Laria's state is a psychological issue, a fact that he blames himself for. He is fully convinced that it's the reason why she isn't waking up because of how he overwhelmed her with his feelings. It's not only he who feels remorse over Laria's comatose state, but also other people who hold her precious. Flowers and get-well-soon presents from the Sherwood family, friends at the Empire, servants, and the Emperor. Most especially, the kiddos who beg for her every day to wake up. It's been days, perhaps weeks, because of a stupid former emperor for trapping Laria for so long since they've last seen her, and all they could think of is blaming themselves. Nocturne tries his best to comfort the children every day, but all he can do is simply reassure and hope for the best. Laria, you must wake up! The kids really miss you! Spring soon ends as the first snowflake falls, and we see Laria waking up. But she's in a very vivid memory? Dream? Of herself as a child sitting on the corner, wallowing in her purpose. Then, seeing her mother appearing, Nam Ju-yun, realizes it's the memory of the time she was abandoned upon seeing her mother instruct the young Ju-yun to pack up before they walked out of the worn-down house. The time when she questions her worth. The memory is quite vivid. Even the comments from left and right from strangers. The abuse of her father by her mother, and how her single mother ultimately had no choice but to abandon her only child. Suddenly, her head is pounding, remembering what had occurred before she woke up to the memory. How on earth is she here instead of the fountain? Then, the memory of a young Ju-yun glitches to a young Laria crying as well. The scene soon changes to her sitting down, watching the young Laria wailing to her family, who are also abandoning her. A similar situation to Ju-yun in the real world. Recognizing this phenomenon, the spirit of the young Laria greets her, vaguely expressing that she's the reason why our Laria is stuck inside a memory. This time, she's not making a request, but she's here to send a divine message from the goddess. She intends to show her the secrets of the world Nam Ju-yun has created. The theater stage reveals a high schooler version of Ju-yun worrying over the upcoming school trip and the expenses. She doesn't have a guardian to sign off for her, nor the clothes and friends to enjoy it with. For her, all of it is simply a luxury to the likes of her. Our Laria stares at the distant memory in shock. She remembers, but why is it being shown? However, a new character appears at the stage, and it's Heinrich. It's not the real Heinrich, but the story character. Out of nowhere, a woman slaps him across his cheek, tears falling off her cheeks, angered at his lies of love. His words are what catch Laria off guard. Heinrich explains that feeling all kinds of emotions, even love, is something he can't afford to have. Hearing those words gives a sense of déjà vu to Laria. She ultimately realizes in a shudder that she wrote all her characters' tragic backgrounds just because of her sob story. The young Laria confirms that since she is the writer of the novel, it is not unlikely for one to make a world about her because it is naturally a part of her. From the sad to the happy parts of the novel, they are all based on her memories too. To emphasize her point, the scene changes to Ju-yun fangirling over a romance story and how she wishes to experience love too. She ultimately brushes it off as only yearning to have a friend to spend time with. The exact same situation happens to the character Irene after she reads her book. She also wishes for a friend to hang out with and share memories with in her lonely world. Getting the point, Laria can't understand why it has come to this. She didn't mean to write down her story for her characters. The young Laria agrees with her that her intentions are purely accidental and mostly emotional. Isn't that why she's striving hard to give the characters a happy ending right now? So why is she watching this tragedy if she's starting to change the course of the story? It's enough that she wallows in guilt and self-loathing. It's the reason why she started writing. But if everyone is hurting because of her, it doesn't mean the story is over just because of that. There is still one last act to show who carries most of her pain and sorrow. Someone none other than Nocturn, who was constantly abused by the former Duke. Back in the novel's world, Irene visits the ducal residence on a rainy day to heal Laria again. Alas, it is still the same thing. No results. Even though there are no results, Irene informs him that she senses some kind of force is blocking Laria from external contact. She's uncertain what kind of force it is, but it is surely the reason why her divine powers don't fully work on Laria's body. She knew of this before, but hesitated, because it just confirms that Laria is not really ordinary. Thunder strikes the residence as Irene shows the Duke a book that reveals an important detail. What details? Is she a goddess of some sort? Why did Ju-yun become Laria? Irene recounts the time she first met Laria in town. It was just an ordinary day to venture out for her, but strangely, she feels like something good is going to happen if she takes the longer path. That's when she met her. That day, Irene was sure that maybe their meeting was destiny. Over time, the longer she spends time with Laria, the more she thinks it's for an entirely different reason. It might be because she is drawn to Laria's power. What power, though? According to the scriptures, she deduces that Laria is an extraordinary being. In ancient times, the world was a war zone, a literal World War III between the goddess and the demon god. Then came the one who collects, with a feather who dispersed the chaos of the world. They also use their final feather to create land, the skies, water, and whatever, including human beings. They soon taught the tiny beings about the two gods, from nasty whispers and curses to the divine gospels. It is said that in the near future, chaos will return when one faction of the world gains dominance, and the one who collects will appear again before the world, as she possesses both powers. Only those who have the abilities of divine powers and demonic powers can recognize the one who collects by looking through their soul. However, the one who collects, who holds both powers, will drink the demonic energy and then be drenched in holy water. The world will open a new path for life. Nocturn is confused as to why the myth of the origin of their world is related to Laria, but Irene may just be right. Laria had drunk the essence of evil back when she was kidnapped. Not only that, she got drenched by the fountain water, which is blessed by the goddess. This aligns with the scriptures, which isn't something that usually occurs to any normal person. Laria might be the one who collects, because there are no other plausible reasons to rely on whatever is happening right now. Analyzing Irene's claims, Nocturne doubts if possessing the power of the demon is the reason why he's drawn to Laria. No, he's certain he truly loves her as she is. It is his own feeling, and not solely because of his powers. All he wishes right now is for her to wake up. Getting back with Laria, she wails for the final act to end. She cannot bear the thought of seeing the young Nocturne suffer anymore, despite it being her who wrote his story. The young Nocturne endured the pain and suffering, crying out loud for the pain to stop. Heck, maybe going to hell is much better than experiencing the lashes and whips. So he did what he could do. He gives in to the madness to escape pain. Whoa, things just got too deep. Poor Nocturne. The dukes from the Blackwell family have always been known to be sharp, strong, and praised for their ability to tell a lie. It is one of the many attributes that made them a powerful force in the entire empire. However, with such an ability used as a weapon, it can also cause the user to become mad when reaching adolescence, like some kind of puberty. Not all dukes or heirs have demon eyes. Since Eric Blackwell, Nocturn's late dad, didn't inherit the ability, it led him to feel like he was failing the bloodline. The last bearer was 5 generations ago. Soon, insecurity and pressure course through his veins. If he can't manifest such power, he has to create it, one way or another. It isn't pretty, but Eric did everything to provoke the manifestations by making his own 2 sons suffer, from destroying whatever they hold dear. Give, take, or kill, may it be alive or not. It wasn't enough, so he further abused them day and night. Pain and weakness were all Nocturne felt, but he only came to overcome them because he had Seamus, his older brother. He was his only hope and light amongst the darkness their dad made them endure. It was during the day of the banquet that Seamus created a plan for them both to escape that night to a nearby barn. Naive and innocent, Nocturne is ready to get a taste of freedom with his brother. Yet the minute they escape, they are surrounded by the guards and Eric. Thinking that he will be protected by his own brother, instead, Seamus kneels down to his father and informs him that it was Nocturne who was trying to escape, and he only caught him in the act. All that brotherly betrayal just to become the heir of the family. What? After the big betrayal, a numb Nocturne is cast away by his father, who realizes that Seamus is far too ambitious to become an heir. Thrown and locked inside a cell downstairs, Seamus, in clean and formal clothes, visits Nocturne with an arrogant smirk on his face that I wish I could punch away. However, the younger one still believes his brother is someone who wouldn't do such a thing. That turns out to be a real slap on the face as Seamus laughs out loud, admitting that he never saw him as his brother but merely a factor to make him the heir. Numb and too weak to even move or express himself, Nocturne's will to live fades little by little. Year after year, surviving and enduring while waiting for death to come, even though he has been heavily betrayed by a traitorous brother, Nocturne still thinks of him. It turns out Seamus had just gotten married recently. All he could think of was his brother's happiness. Up until Eric came down to tell him that he would enter the mansion because Seamus had passed from a measly fever after his marriage. I think he deserves something more horrible. However, for the poor Nocturne, it is a huge turning point in his life. Did he get betrayed all for Seamus to die? He soon gets overwhelmed by his own madness, manifesting the demon eyes. Eric, on the other hand, is just overjoyed by the sight when Nocturne, controlled by his insanity, kills his father on the spot while crying to himself. My poor baby, all that for power? I hope his dad and bro burn in hell! After that day, Nocturne became Duke and became a warrior after plenty of years of experience, but the loneliness within never fades. Seeing everything from his point of view, Lauria realizes how much she had applied her story to her characters. Nocturne's suffering, Heinrich's hopelessness, and Irene's need to have friends. They were all part of who she is as Julian. All that is a reminder of the pain that she keeps running away from, which coincidentally causes pain to the others. Calling out to the other Laria, she requests to go back. Only fierce determination is present in her eyes and the hope to create happiness. She may have been running away, and misery will never disappear, but a happy memory and love can change a person completely, erasing all the pain and sorrow. Prepared for the consequences, she asks for another chance. Acknowledging her request, the young Laria shows her the way back and informs her that this will be their last meeting. However, she will continue on to watch over her, expecting to see what kind of world she will create. As soon as Lauria runs to get back to reality, the goddess and demon god appear in front of the young Lauria, smiling happily and knowingly watching Lauria from afar. They had total faith in her right from the very start to shape the world for an unending future. Lauria soon wakes up to see Nocturne. He wraps his arms around her in a warm embrace, just happy to see her alive. Unspoken feelings and words, but both relish in each other's warmth from the days they missed together. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one!